Are we set up with Bill too? Is he still? Bill? All right, good evening, everyone. I apologize for the delay. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance. Is it just me? No students?
Yep, just you.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we have the roll call this evening. Just for note, Mr. Whitman is joining us on Zoom again this evening. And I will turn it over to Mr. Pipperato for our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Iago. I'd like to start this evening with a moment of silence. I'll ask you to observe with me. We have two recent deaths of former staff members. Eugene Jean Rubino, who was employed in the district from 1993 to 2018. Gene was a secondary English teacher. He retired back in June of 2018. Unfortunately, we lost Gene on March 11th, 2023. And most recently, we were informed of John Merlot's passing. John was employed in the school district from 1991 to 2013. He was a special education teacher, a consultant, and a transition coordinator. He retired in December of 2013 and passed away March 20th. So at this time, please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And our sincere condolences to Jean and John's family and friends. Moving on, we have Ms. Broadhead is here with the Broadhead's Heroes. So we're going to ask Jenna if you want to get us started and then do whatever it is you need to do. I know we have a slideshow and lots of good information to share. So thank you so much for being here.
I don't actually know what's in store for us,
Oh,
but
all
I get
right.
to introduce this powerhouse group of young ladies. Most of them I've been with since, some of them when they started 5th grade, some of them when they started 6th grade at the middle school. I was there for Estelle's first day of school ever at March Elementary School, so we've been together for a long time. Again, I have no idea what they're going to share, but I just listen to what they tell me to do. So, ladies?
I'll start. Hello, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lauren Gallagher. I'm a senior at the high school. I also have Sydney Luciano here, also a senior, Estelle Fox, also a senior, and Suhani Makwana, a junior. So we have a team of about 35 students within the school district that join us in our fundraising for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in honor of Mrs. Broadhead every year. So if you could click to the next slide. So who are we? So in 2017, we started Easton Hero Squad. A couple of us are in that picture. And basically, Mrs. Broadhead came to us and was like, would you guys like to do a coin drive? We were like, sure. So we spent our advisory periods putting together boxes, running around the school, collecting coins. And I don't think we ever would have guessed the impact we'd be able to make in that moment. So up until today, we have continued as Easton Hero Squad and Team Broadhead's Heroes through LLS to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. So that second picture there is at the gala this year. So for LLS, we participate in this campaign called Student of the Year. It's a 7-week campaign from early January to the end of February that we have done for 6 years now? 6 years now. So we have one of the longest legacy teams in the Greater Lehigh Valley campaign that we compete in. So that's kind of beginning to end, end for now where we're at. If you go to the next slide. So just a quick thank you. We have Dr. D'Angelo there and then Mr. Pipperato, as well as I'd like to thank Mrs. Piazza for all the work that she's done in helping us, and just the support within the Easton community has been absolutely insane. And I do have to give props to Mrs. Broadhead. She has touched so many people in this school district, not only through her job, but through who she is as a person. So we've been more than grateful to have sports teams and coaches and administration be helpful from the beginning to at least the end of my career at Easton, and then in continuing the legacy that we've created here. So would like to thank everyone who's been involved in our mission so far, and we'll thank you guys for continuing that legacy once the seniors that created this in the beginning leave. So next slide. So I don't even know where to start. Mrs. Broadhead is one of the people in my life that I am most grateful for. She hears from me way too often, and helps me truly become, has helped me truly become the person I am. I owe a lot of credit to her for allowing me to be the person I am today. So, and we can all share our own stories. We were able to share on Lehigh Valley Live an article in the beginning or mid-January. And once again, just the amount of people that she's impacted is insane. So for those of you that don't know, Mrs. Broadhead had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She is now in remission almost for 10 years. This is a x-ray of her spine. So the best way that she has explained it to us is that her doctors told her that the lymphoma in her back looked like toothpaste around her spine, which made it very hard to remove. So now she has these cages in her back. So a big part of what we do is we focus not only that she had a crazy treatment plan, but it still has effects today. I don't really know how you can walk around with a cage in your back and not feel that every day. So there's that. And then Mrs. Broadhead also has a son who is our age. So that always spoke a lot to me that, he had to watch his mom kick cancer's butt. But also the fact that, that is something that I can't imagine having to go through with, a mother that I'm very close with as well. And Mrs. Broadhead is like a second mother to mine. So we think about that a lot in our mission as well. So next slide, please. So Team Broadhead's Heroes has had a huge impact on Easton, and it's unfortunate how many people are affected by blood cancer, but nonetheless that has made it so that this mission has spread even further. So this was in 2019, fall of 2019, before COVID shut everything down. We had a Easton Hero Squad blackout night. Once again, always having the support of our Rover Nation, student section, band, cheerleading has been insane. So this was one of the first nights that we were really able to get our name out there, and we've been able to do time and time again. So next slide. So 2022 is when we really made a dent on the Student of the Year campaign in the Greater Lehigh Valley. So candidates include myself, Alexa Catanero, who cannot be here tonight, and then Sydney. So do you want to speak a little bit about our campaign?
So, hello everyone.
Hello.
So our campaign was over 7 weeks. That's when the competition takes place. We really focused on getting our mission out there and letting everyone know why we're doing this. And of course, for Mrs. Broadhead and the impact she's made on us, we really wanted to spread it and raise as much money as possible to do whatever we can to help aid cancer treatments, cancer patients, whatever we could do. So we reached out to our community, definitely a lot of help from the high school community. As Lawrence said previously, tremendous help there. We set up many events, including dinner nights. We had a roller skating night, and we just had a lot of fun events, which really brought our team together, and our team members really focused on our mission. And that is also part of why we were able to win the Mission Award, which is given to the team throughout the campaign that really focused on what they were doing and why they were doing it. And a huge part of that was we set up a blood drive and really connected through our community. So we were second runner-ups, and our grand total was $42,000 and $317. So yeah, that was our campaign.
So that was in 2022. So we had some big shoes to fill for this year, and you'll see soon that they knocked it out of the park. So if you could go to the next slide. So here were just some more pictures from the 2022 gala. So all the teams come together, and year in and year out, we have the biggest teams there. Always the ones on the dance floor. In the front of the picture on the left is the honored hero from last year. So we were dancing with him, and we're able to also hopefully make his night special as well. So also just a quick shout out, I guess, this is also in the height of COVID. So the community support that we received, even in a time where nothing was really known, once again, we're extremely grateful for. So next slide. So leading into this year, we definitely wanted to make sure that we acted as mentors to the students filling our spots as candidates this year. So I'll quickly speak on the Orange Out this year. The class of 2023 Student Council led the Orange Out in honor of the students in our class that have passed. Once again, blood cancer is so prevalent that unfortunately one of those students has passed from leukemia. So Orange is not only leukemia awareness, but also the awareness color that we've kind of taken on as a class, and you'll see orange at graduation and things like that. So we kind of kickstarted this year off with another big football turnout with our Orange Out, and that was able to yield like a $1,000 donation towards their campaign. So if Tavleen is not here tonight, I did want to say that, but Estelle and Suhani kind of want to talk more about their campaign this year.
Yeah, absolutely. You can move to the next slide. So I'm Estelle Fox. This is Suhani. Tavleen unfortunately could not be here tonight. I do want to just address that all of the previous candidates were just such great mentors to us, and we could not have done this without them. But this year, we were able to raise a whopping $57,958 for our campaign, and we were awarded a research grant because of that. But I do just want to say that this campaign lasts 7 weeks, but the preparation for it took basically half the year, if not more, before that, because it is such a big goal to meet, and we did want to make the most impact that we could for Mrs. Broadhead. So Suhani can kind of talk about some of the events that we had going on this year, but it was really just such a great experience to be a part of, and we're really glad of the impact that we made.
Hi, everyone. Truly going into this, I had no idea what I was getting into. I had seen all the pictures and everything from the last campaign, which they did absolutely amazing in, and Broadhead dragged me into this. And it was just, honestly, it was insane. Going through, it was more than I could ever imagine. We did multiple events every week, and I just remember sitting down in a meeting with Mr. Geiger, and we're like, we have these 40 events we'd like to get done. We'd like to schedule these, and just the constant support of the entire district in all of these events. I loved my personal favorite was the Block Out Cancer sign that was on at the high school and the middle school. Kids would just walk up, donate $1, get a blood drop on the wall, and we covered it. It was truly amazing to see that. And just all the way throughout those 7 weeks and prepping and planning, and it was just truly amazing.
You can go to the next slide next. Yeah, thank you.
I also wanted to mention that we did continue the tradition of sort of the blood drive that was previously started, and that was one of the ways that we really stayed mission focused throughout this campaign, and we're then eventually able to win the mission award for the second year for our team. Not only did we have the blood drive, but we also really wanted to make sure that we could reach as many people as we could with our message. So we did have the Lehigh Valley Live article that Lauren mentioned, and we also went on local TV in Wilkes-Barre for PA Live, and it was really cool, the opportunities that we were able to have in order to make this sort of impact and reach out to communities that weren't just in our district but in places beyond.
And if you go to the next slide. So, in continuing this legacy, it's been crazy to think that we were just saying how many years it's been since middle school. I don't want to think about it, but it's incredible. It's incredible to think that this will be here even once seniors graduate. So, for those of you that don't know, Sarah Olagino, she at a track meet right now, but she will be taking this on next year, as well as 2 other candidates that have yet to be named. But once again, just the impact we've been able to make is incredible. So we'd like to present this check for Mrs. Broadhead. This is from this year. It'll be able to go in her office at the high school. But just recap, in that the last 2 years we were able to raise over $100,000. So something that we're incredibly proud of, and wouldn't have been able to do without her mentorship. So the last slide then. So in raising $50,000 this year, we were able to name a research grant in Mrs. Broadhead's name. So we've decided that the research grant will go towards non-Hodgkin's lymphoma aggressive research in honor of Mrs. Broadhead. So you can see the last time we were here with the check was a while ago. Some familiar faces there, and Easton graduates, and once again, just the the impact that Mrs. Brada has had. So this research grant will speak not only to the people in the school district and how Easton has been able to be this power in raising this money, but also to the people across the country that this research will benefit. So we thank you guys for your time and once again for your support. We love Mrs. Brada. And
The thing I did not know what the research grant was until tonight. So that's, some teachers get a mug. I get a research grant. But you are looking at our future doctors and lawyers and educators and computer scientists, and they don't nearly give themselves enough credit for the hard work that they put in. I've learned more from them than I could have ever taught them. So we are definitely in good hands. And they will be caring for me in my old age. But this is truly, they've grown tremendously from these little kids to young adults. So it's been great to be part of their journey, and I'm not crying.
No tears. No tears.
Okay, so obviously, first, thank you for being here this evening, and what an amazing presentation. Lauren, you mentioned a really powerful word, to me at least, is the word legacy. You know, as I get nearer the end of my career, I think about it, and that's exactly what you've done. And Jenna, what you've done over your years here. So I think the most beneficial thing you can do anywhere is to leave a legacy that others will pick up and champion for you as they move forward. So something that you can be proud of for many, many years, the people whose lives you'll save and the people whose lives you've touched, it really is impressive. So it's amazing how as old bucks we can learn so much from this generation and beyond. So congrats, keep up the great work. We look forward to hearing from the heroes as time goes on. And Jenna, congratulations for everything you do. Any board members? Nope, you good? Moving on?
Nope.
Okay, all right. Thank you again, girls and ladies, and feel free to leave at any time. I also wanted to mention that this is National Assistant Principals Week, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our assistant principals. I will tell you that, and this is just Dave Piperato's experience, so I don't want anybody getting mad at me. But I can tell you that in my experience, the high school principal position was the hardest job in education. The assistant principal position is the worst job in education. I don't know whether those of you who've had that experience feel the same way I do, but it is often thankless. Like the principal position, it's many hours. You really have an impact on so many lives, but very rarely get to see that impact. And it is filled with conflict all day, every day. And yet they keep coming back each day and giving their best. So certainly at some point we'll recognize our building principals, but for tonight I wanted to give a special shout out to our assistant principals. I've been there, I feel your pain, I know what you're going through, but you really are the backbone of the district. The support you provide our teachers, which is critical and very rarely seen, and of course the one-on-one work that you do with students, 9, 10, 11 hours a day is amazing. So thank you for that. And that concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pipperato. We will move on here to academics, educational technology, and student supports. Dr. Keegan is not able to be with us tonight, so I will ask Ms. Piazza to take us through the agenda.
Thank you. Good evening. You can switch slides, please. So, as always, just want to start with a couple of updates and department shout-outs. One, I wanted to bring to the attention of the public that our calendar has been reposted on our website. There are no changes to the dates, but we did include graduation on there. So graduation is scheduled for Tuesday, June 6th at 6 p.m. at Cottingham Stadium, and June 7th would be the rain date. And then the last thing in there that I want to talk about is our ESL staff who held a family engagement night on March 30th at Paxenosa. That included activities for our students and their families, but it also included some advice and information for our families regarding immigration law and immigration status, We have an attorney who has been generous with her time for quite a number of years now that comes out and meets with our families as a collective unit, but also then we'll meet with them individually there privately at the school if they have individual questions that they want to ask around immigration or around other concerns that they may have based on their status here within the United States. So we're appreciative of our ESL staff who puts these activities together for the kids and the families, and certainly appreciative of our attorney who comes out each year, sometimes multiple times throughout the year, to meet with families and parents and try to give them support when sometimes it's a challenge for them to know where to turn. So we thank them for that. Next slide, please. So this list that you will hear, our subcommittee of the board heard about each one of these items, but these are the voting items that you will see on April 18th. We have an IXL quote, which is an expansion. We adopted IXL this year as one of our resources for collecting data and supporting students. We've had such favorable comments in return on that we are going to expand that through 8th grade for next year. Delta Math is something that we have been doing for a number of years, so that's a renewal, as is STAR. Our special ed plan is a plan that is required, similar to our comprehensive plan, every so often through Pennsylvania Department of Ed. That does have to be posted on our website for 28 days, and it is there. So this is a draft of that plan for the public and board to review and provide Kara Dufour with some feedback if you feel so inclined. There is a job coaching contract that is for the IU20, and that is regarding some individual needs for students that we have. And then the rest of those items there are from Mr. Reichel through our Student and Community Service Department, and all of them are somehow related to the mental health and support for our students and families across the rest of this year and through the summer. So those are items that we'll be seeking your approval on next week. Next slide, please. And then the last conversation that we want to have is that, as you all know, we have our Easton Arts Academy Elementary Charter School here in the Easton Area School District region. That charter school had proposed a charter 6 years ago actually, and that charter has elapsed. So this year they're working without a charter and have proposed to our board a revised and renewed charter for the next 5 years. We do have a representative with us here this evening from the charter school who can certainly answer questions of the board. But at this point, we are here to just provide the community and the board with some information. We will have this on our agenda next week as a voting item. At this point in time, we have gone back and forth with the charter school, asking to look at some of their records, trying to understand processes within that organization. We have given them some requests that we would like to see as we move forward, and have worked out an agreement that our board is considering at this point. The choice that our board has at this point is to renew that agreement for 5 years, or to decline that, in which case there's another full process involved. And so at this point, I would turn it over to the board and Attorney Freund if you have further comments or questions. And certainly we have a representative here if you have questions that you would like to ask of him.
I can just comment that the charter that's been proposed, been worked on, with representatives from the charter school, and I think that the enhancements there will improve and ensure not only transparency but also accountability. And at this point, I think we have an agreement on what that language is. So, from our perspective, we're prepared to recommend it.
I do have a few questions. I don't know if perhaps if you would like to come to the podium and just introduce yourself and give us the opportunity to ask some questions then.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Muhammad Haggag. I'm the acting CEO of the Eastern Arts Academy. Thank you for having me tonight.
Sure. So I guess I'd just like to start, the document that the board has seen is very similar in language to the original charter in terms of what is being asked of the charter school. A lot of areas about required reporting, for example, to the school district that has not been done over the last 5 years. So, you know, my fundamental question is, given that the language in many cases is the same, what are you and the school going to do or change to ensure that you are then compliant with all of the areas that you've not been compliant with thus far?
I can speak for the past 3 years because before that I wasn't at the school.
That'd be
certainly-
great. Start with that, yeah.
Yes, sure, yeah. As you said, the charter has all the required documents and required reports that we have to submit to the district, and at the same time we have to submit to the state, to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. The annual charter report, the special education plan, all the reports that we have to comply with. In my time in the last 3 years, I have submitted all the financial documents that were asked to the financial office, to Whitney, all the monthly financials, the budget, audit reports, all this kind of reports. So we reached out to submit the documents. We have them. When the time for the renewal came and the reports were asked, we supplied all the reports and the documents, and we are open for any conversation and a way to make it easier on the district and us to submit the documents at any time.
Okay.
And as the attorney says, the reports that are asked is to enhance more accountability on our side. There is another item in there, a 5-year plan that the school has to provide to the district of how are we enhancing the art department with the curriculum of the school itself, which is the main foundation of why there is an art academy in the school district.
So I guess my question is, are you submitting those documents without being asked? Or, I mean, my concern is that it shouldn't be the school district's responsibility to ask for items when the charter specifically says that the school will submit them to the school district. So are there processes in place to ensure that individuals at your school are
Yes.
submitting them?
All I need is just the name or an email, and
Okay.
I will submit them
Okay.
on time.
Okay, good. And then the other question I have, sort of related to that, is that your charter indicates that there will be at least 6 members of your board who are Easton residents. So can you talk about the composition of your board currently, and if it's not in compliance with that, what the plan is to get into compliance?
So the board currently has four board members. They are in the process of getting a 5th board member. About 2 years ago, we had 7 board members. You are all familiar with the issues at the school, with the allegations and all issues that we had. Board members are a volunteer position. People usually don't want to tag along for a while and they leave. But we are currently working and having with the board, I'm actually working with the board to ensure that we have 6 board residents from Easton or more than 6 board members to be at the school. It actually benefits the school more than having 4 board members. A recent board meeting, we only had 2 and we had to cancel the meeting. So it's not beneficial for us not having.
Right, yeah, I think that's a real concern of ours, you know, that there's a lot of oversight that can be offered from your board.
Yes.
Do you know if the 4 board members that are serving currently, are they Easton residents?
I believe so.
Okay, so I think that that's another area that I'd like to see, certainly by the start of, you know, the upcoming school year, that you have a full complement of board members in place. So I really want to emphasize that as well. Okay, I'm going to stop there and let other board members ask questions. Thank you. Nobody else? Nikisha?
One question I had is, I became aware that you were looking for an executive director, and I just wanted to know if the position of CEO and executive director, is that one position or
Yes.
is 2 separate ones?
No, it's the same position.
just same
I'm
position.
currently acting
Okay.
CEO, not
Okay.
the actual one.
Okay.
Our last CEO left in December for medical reasons, and
Okay.
since then I've been the acting one, and the position was posted in February,
Okay.
and the board is currently hiring for that position.
Okay, that's it.
Are there other questions from board members, comments, concerns, anything you'd like to express now? Okay. All right, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So in answer to one of Mrs. Sayago's questions and who to direct the information to, we have decided, and I believe it's written right in there, to have it directed to the office of the superintendent. And then from our end, we will dispense it to the appropriate offices for review. So that'll make it easier for the school. That'll just come, to our office. And then again, you can expect a vote from the board on the 18th of April for this. At this time, the recap is that we have a handful of items that we are seeking the board approval on next week. We will be voting on the charter school as well, and reminding everyone that graduation is on June 6th with a rain date of June 7th at 6 p.m. at Cottingham Stadium. And that is all for our report. Are there any interested citizens that want to speak on the academic portion of the evening? Seeing none, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
We're going to switch the order of committee meetings right now very quickly. Dr. Bolts, you have to stay till the end anyway, so we're going to butt in front of you if you don't mind. I know you have a lot of important information to present to us this evening, so we want to give you your due time and not once you feel rushed. So we're going to flip and do buildings and grounds first, and then Matt will come back to you. So Ken owes you lunch.
Okay, well, buildings and grounds, Mrs. Hart.
That's me.
Yep, go right ahead.
So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Styack.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Right. So we no. Anyway, we have 3 items that we will be bringing to the board for recommendation for approval in 2 weeks. However, we also have 1 or 2 items tonight that we want to present and for dialogue purpose. And one of them is really exciting for us. We had an opportunity to talk with our Buildings and Grounds Committee regarding this presentation this evening, which I'll give some background to. But we're really looking forward to it, and we certainly have some guests with us tonight to do that presentation. If the board remembers, we had presented probably last June or July the recommendations for capital improvements and the plan associated with it. And if you remember, that list really encompassed a lot of high school needs. I don't think to anybody's surprise, but that had a very, very large amount of high school pieces that needed to be taken a look at. That capital plan and that capital project improvement really just looks at the infrastructure and the overall operations and buildings and grounds aspect. It does not address capacity issues per se. It does not address aesthetics. It does not address the learning environment, the learning spaces. It really just focuses on that buildings and grounds perspective. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to take a look at that, and then we also wanted to take a look at some of the learning environment pieces that we would be looking to do over the next few years into the future, and address it from that perspective. Last week, I think it was last week, we had an opportunity to take some of the board members on a tour of the high school to also share and show some of the areas of concern that we have as a district, as a high school administration, district administration, in regard to the high school itself. And then also answer some questions from Mr. Geiger. So what we wanted to do tonight is really a combination of all of that. And we wanted to be able to present to the board tonight some recommendations and some thought processes on possible concepts moving forward for the high school specifically. So in order to do that, we have Allie, Five, and Dewey here to help us present. But before I call you up to the podium to present, I'm going to just throw a little curveball here, and I'm going to ask Mr. Geiger to come up to the podium, and he feels great about that. So I asked Mr. Geiger just to come up tonight because as we speak about the capital projects and the capital improvement process, and we focus on those projects to address the needs in that infrastructure and facility perspective, I also asked Mr. Geiger just to share with the board some of his perspective as the building leader, as the high school principal this evening, in a few minutes, from your perspective, Mr. Geiger, about the instructional needs, the environment itself, and just an overall summary from you. So if you wouldn't mind just stepping up and sharing that with us, we'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Ken. I know it's not being cooperative, but that's certainly better. Thanks, Ken.
Principal voice, Kyle.
Yeah, I don't need a microphone. sometimes it makes me too loud. So first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Ziadek, and thank you to the board for allowing me to open up this presentation. It's a very exciting presentation, as was already said. And again, I want to thank the school board members who were able to make it that evening and did tour the high school with us. I think that was able to give you a real look at what some of the facilities look like at the high school. I also just want to quickly thank Alloy 5 and Dewey Engineering for all their guidance in getting us to this point with the concepts that you'll see this evening. And first of all, I'd like to say, as a principal and as a community member, I'm very proud of the recent facility updates that we've had in our district. I think they're very much worth being proud of. And I'm even more excited about the possibilities that do lay ahead for Easton Area High School. Our high school that sits in its current location has had several different footprints, as many of you are aware. We have had several additions to the building over time. All of those were to meet the needs of a growing student body. The previous additions to the building, while necessary, they have created a pretty expansive building at this point. And in some cases, that is not conducive to the transition time of our students between the bells. It is a very large and very wide building. We have essentially outgrown the facility, and I don't want to take away from their presentation, but I think you will see tonight where we stand percentage-wise on capability or capacity of the building, and we are beyond that 100%. So our teachers often share classroom space, they share office space, which again, is not impossible. We're making do, but certainly would be nice for our facilities to be upgraded in those areas. Additions to the classrooms and additions that we've added over the years have certainly been helpful, but hallways and stairways still remain the same to the original building. And when I say original, I really mean small. So certainly traffic flow is a concern within the building, challenging at best with approximately 3,000 students in the building. Certain areas of our building get very congested during that transition time. Some portions of the building, as you saw, for those who were there, have electrical infrastructure that is difficult to support the device needs of our students and our staff in modern education. And I would probably say that the only area more congested than our hallways is our parking lots at both arrival and dismissal. I think that's certainly something that we would like to see addressed from a safety concern as well as an efficiency standpoint. As we move Easton Area High School into the future, we envision some changes to the building, common spaces that allow students to gather and collaborate with one another, or come to and work independently on their own. We would love to see student service areas that provide space and resources for our students to enhance their high school experience and also to support their individual student needs. So I'm very excited, and I want to just say for myself and for the project team, we very much look forward to the feedback after tonight's presentation. And as I said, I'm very excited to see where we go from here in terms of the possibilities at Easton Area High School. It certainly is a need, and we certainly would love to see that come to fruition. So
Thank you,
I
Kyle.
won't take up too much time.
I appreciate it, and we'll bring up Michelle and the team in a moment. Really, what's important is thank you to everybody that's been on that team. You're good, Kyle. Sit down. And just to say thank you to everybody that's been involved. What we wanted to do this evening, though, was be able to bring some concepts to the board. These are not final recommendations. They're not decisions. They're just that. They're concepts in nature, just to start a conversation. And just for the purpose of this evening, we're not looking for direction this evening either. What we really would like to do is have this presentation, put some ideas out there, and then gather some feedback over the next month, and then ultimately look for some guidance from the board in the May meeting on how we want to proceed if we want to proceed. So we're really excited for it. Michelle, I know I kind of gave a little bit of intro for the timeline, but I think that's okay. So without further ado, I'd just like to welcome our members from Alloy 5 and Dewey, and I know you'll do some introduction as well. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. There's some familiar faces here from last week. I'll wait for Bill to finish handing out the presentations first before we get started. But thank you, Mr. Ziadek, for your introduction, and to Mr. Geiger for kicking it off for us as well. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to meet with us today. And special thanks to the Easton design team that we've been meeting with and being so accommodating and taking our meetings every other week for the past few months, as you'll see. I'd also like to acknowledge, while we're getting ready to start here, that you have some lovely ladies that presented earlier today and some great students at your school. And I think between that and how Mr. Geiger kicked off our presentation here, it's a great segue into the conversation we're going to have today, because I think Alloy 5, Easton, Dewey, we all think that the students here deserve the best. And they clearly deserve it by the girls you had in here earlier today. Does everyone have it that they need? Good? Yeah, Josh, you've seen it. You've seen it. All right, if you go to the next slide. All right, so I just want to quickly introduce our team here. Randy Galliotto should be pretty familiar to everyone. He's with us today. He is our principal architect. My name is Michelle Mazingo. I'm a senior interior architectural designer. We also have Bill Deegan, a senior designer as well with Alloy 5. And then on our next slide, can introduce the Dewey team. We have Josh Grice, senior project manager. And then Andrew lost his title somewhere in this presentation, but shouldn't have because he does a lot with us. So we also have Andrew Mather, who should be very familiar to the group as well. If you go to the next slide here, we'll just do a quick recap. Mr. Zayad kind of kicked us off with this, but we've been meeting since August of last year, just starting to talk about what we'd like to see for the high school in the future, starting to talk about some of the current issues as Mr. Geiger started off with here. And from there, we've been meeting bi-weekly with our design team, and we've been studying the site. We've been studying various concepts. So the things you see in front of you today that we're going to present, it's not the only thing we looked at, but what we thought might be, in our professional opinion, the best options to take a look at first. As a design team, we walked through the building on the 17th over President's Day weekend and got a sense of the building from an architectural and engineering standpoint. And then a week or so ago, the Buildings and Grounds team pretty much did the same thing. Some familiar faces from that walkthrough, and I think everyone there got a similar sense that we did as what the current state of the high school looks like. And then we also had attended our Buildings and Grounds meeting last Tuesday, and here we are in front of you today at the committee meeting. So a quick overview of Easton Area High School. The property size is 81 acres. You can see that outlined with the dotted line there. It's a gross square footage of approximately 377,000 square feet. The total enrollment's just over 3,000 students, and when you do the math there, that gives about 125 square feet per student. On average, we like to see something more in the 165 to 185 range. So the school is a little deficient as it currently stands, and you can also see that in its current building capacity, which is over 100% at 109. A target that we'd usually like to see is about 85% for schools. So to talk about the current enrollment right now, this is actually a little interesting. We pull our enrollment data from PDE, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and their numbers are actually a little bit different than the actual enrollment that the district has provided for us. They're saying you guys are just under 3,000 students, but with talking with Mr. Geiger and the rest of the district, you are at that 3,020 number. And they're also projecting a bit of a decline in the student population over the next 10 plus years. We think differently based on the development and growth that the city has seen, and the district is looking into exploring some other options into getting different ideas of numbers there. Looking at this presentation moving forward, with our assumption that there will be some growth, but PDE saying otherwise, we decided to look at the capacity of any of these concepts as it currently stands with that 3,020 students. If you go to the next slide, just so you can start to see here that projection, we like to target a good 4 to 5 years out from the current year. They're suggesting about 2,690 students. Again, we'll get those numbers for the team as we move forward with our studies. And just a quick look at the district timeline in terms of projects. Mr. Zayadic started off our conversation here talking about how the Buildings and Grounds have met in the past and the projects that the district has taken on. The high school had an addition put onto the building, a new wing, in the year 2003. They also kicked off what we're calling phase 1 of district projects, which included Shawnee Elementary School, March Elementary School, renovations, and a very large addition and renovation to Easton High School in 2009. And then Paxenosa received a renovation in 2006. That kicked off the second phase of the district projects, the more recent phase that we've looked at. Tracy Elementary School in 2017, Forks in 2018, Cheston wrapped up in 2020, Cottingham received its renovations in 2021, and then Palmer is set to be completed this year. And in looking at this, I think it's one thing to acknowledge that the district has done a lot to improve on the academic environments for the students over the years. But as you can see, the high school was last addressed just 20 years ago now, becoming over 20 years. And as the students move through their educational experience, they're getting these wonderful schools in the elementary schools, state-of-the-art middle school, and then they're getting to the high school, and we're lacking some of that innovative educational environments that the students should have as they're ending their educational experience and moving on to either higher ed or the career force. Move to the next slide here. This is just a quick recap on the capital improvements to date that Dewey has worked with the district. Andrew, you take it over.
So this slide here should look fairly familiar to you. This is not the entire list. We kind of have a break line in there. But as Mr. Ziatek had mentioned in the start, excuse me, these items really only talk about the structure, the building, the systems. And they don't talk about what Mr. Geiger had mentioned as more of a holistic view of how the high school needs to function, how it needs to support the students, how it needs to support the staff. So, when we presented this previously to you, we go through the building, we prioritize items based on a number of criteria, and we give these, this list here, but it really doesn't reflect, the entire story. So that's just something I wanted to touch upon there. And I think Michelle will kind of go through how they started to grade the building based on our walkthrough last month.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go to the next slide. As I mentioned, we did our internal team survey with the Dewey team, the Easton team, and the Alloy 5 team, and we evaluated the building a little differently than the academic team might, than Mr. Geiger might, than Mr. Ziatek might. We were looking at it from an architectural and engineering standpoint. If you go to the next slide, you can see how we grade a school based on its building evaluations. So I won't go through each of these items here on the list, but we have an existing grading rubric that we reference with these categories. We give them a rating, and if you move to the next slide, you can see how that formula is created. So you have a category rating times an importance factor, and all of that is added up and divided by 16, and you get this priority color scale, which is a better way to digest this information, which is a little technical. So you could see that if you're in the green area, you're looking at 8+, even more years before you would need to address an item. If you're somewhere in the orange and the red, we're looking at immediate to critical items that we should be looking at. If you go to the next slide, this is what we lovingly call a school's report card from a building evaluation standpoint. Unfortunately, Easton Area High School is not doing too well right now. If you look at the site, structure, architecture, mechanical and fire, electrical and plumbing, as a whole, on average, the building is rated poor. You'll see a lot of those orange and yellow colors up there, so that average to poor rating. I will note the only critical item up there right now that we have should be the technology, which is being addressed by the district and Dewey this summer in terms of getting the high school up to date with the new short throw projectors.
The electrical distribution
And the
too.
electrical distribution as well. Thank you, Mr. Ziatek. So there's a lot to address here, not only from an academic standpoint, but from a building facility standpoint as well. If you move to the next slide. For those that weren't on the tour with us last week, this is a good snapshot of some of the items we saw when you're looking at some of those poor to critical items. The VCT flooring in one of the art rooms, for example, is actually starting to come up and becoming a major tripping hazard. As we talked about, the technology is lacking and a little disproportionate in certain classrooms. Suspended ceilings from past roof drain leaks that have been addressed, but the ceilings have not. Plumbing fixtures are not to code. Lockers are not utilized from our conversations with the district, and being in the hallways, they clog up that circulation that Mr. Geiger was talking about earlier and don't function properly. The windows are a little off within the school. Some areas have single pane, some are double pane, some don't have the thermal insulation that they need, so also a poor rating. Before we jump into the design principles, does anyone have any questions or comments at this point in time? No? All right, so as we look at these concepts moving forward within our team, we wanted to ground each of these concepts that we looked at in design principles, and we categorized that by the site and the building. Within the site, we wanted to make sure that we would always be addressing the topography. If you've been at the high school, it's a very unique topography with quite a sloping site from when you're at William Penn down to the ramp of 25th Street off of 22. To organize the traffic circulation within the school, to Mr. Geiger's point earlier, it's a bit of a mess in the mornings and the afternoons. Improve field adjacencies. Right now, the district's building components aren't necessarily located next to the athletic fields that they should be. And then enhance the athletics on the site if possible. If we're ever going to be looking at touching the site, we'd always want to make sure we're addressing the athletics as well. The building currently stands as a 3-story building, and ideally that's where we'd like to maintain it to address that vertical circulation. Anything more than that can become a bit challenging. Organize layout and circulation, again, to Mr. Geiger's point, just streamline that as best as we can. Enhance academic environments, community space adjacencies. When you walk into the school right now, your gym's at the opposite end of where the auditorium is versus the library, cafeteria, so those spaces that the community might be utilizing are scattered throughout the floor plan right now. Secure entrance points is a given, and then future academic needs. We don't want to build for the here and now, but for what the next 50 plus years of this school will look like. So looking at some of these preliminary concepts, we have 4 concepts that we're going to look at today. One is a renovation option, and this would include infrastructure improvements, a lot of what Andrew and the Dewey team have on that list, plus additions to address that 109% capacity that we're looking at, that very low square foot per student. A hybrid option is what we're calling mostly a new construction, but we wanted to see if there was anything within the existing school that we could look at adaptively reusing for something new to hopefully be resourceful. And then we wanted to look at 2 completely new construction concepts, one on the upper lot of the site and then one on the lower lot of the site as well. So looking at our first option here, the infrastructure and improvements plus additions, if you go to the next slide here, Bill, if you want to come up and join me as well to review some of these options. For this option, we're looking at a gross square footage of about over 500,000 square feet. As a reminder, the current square footage is around 377,000 square feet. This would give you a square foot per student of about 167 if we stuck with that 3,020 student ratio. And this renovation square footage would be just shy of what the existing square footage of the building is now. And the new addition to the building would be roughly 160,000 square feet. When looking at the site, those additions would take over the back area by the natatorium. We would also be looking at infilling one of the courtyards that are underutilized right now, and then reworking the existing auditorium, main entrance, and administrative area.
Next slide. So one of the things that we wanted to do was maintain most of the site work with this scheme, right? So there's not a lot happening to the site, but that also means that some of the things that happen on the site are going to continue to happen on the site. So we will be able to improve the traffic flow, but because the school is staying exactly where it is and we're not touching the site too much, we'll still have some of those issues, but we will be able to smooth them out. What we're looking at is a new main entrance that's brought to the exterior of the school, so that increases the safety, secure entrance. And then in that zone, we get a really nice performing arts, a new auditorium, and some back of house spaces. If you went on the tour, you understand how bad the back of house was. There's no space to actually put on a production. So that addition will take care of all of that. And then in the back, we focus on athletics in the community. So this becomes our community zone. We move the cafeteria back to that zone so that it can be used by the community during sporting events. And then the third major addition is in the center. And that really creates a new media center and sort of a hub of student activity and also a hub of circulation. So what we've done is we've linked the front door to the sort of the other front door, the athletics main door, with this main circulation corridor that infills the middle of the school and then allows for a very sort of exciting and kind of a collegial kind of campus space for the media center, improving the circulation and the time in the school so that you don't have to go around the loop, you can go through the loop. And, this project happens in phases, and it happens over time. So it would take 5 years. We would start, we don't know where yet, but we would start in a corner and continue around the school for a period of around 5 years until the whole renovation was done.
So looking back at those design principles that we talked about when we looked at each of these concepts, we wanted to come back to that as our center point. And as you can see here, it doesn't necessarily check all the boxes. Yes, we are maintaining the existing topography and we are working with that. We're maintaining that 3-story building. We're going to, as Bill mentioned, secure the entrance points, and then we will be looking at those future academic needs with those common spaces that we'd be adding to. I will note with this option too, as you saw on the slide prior there, there's a lot of complex phasing that goes into this option. This is a challenging option. If you go to the next slide, you could start to see how that becomes more challenging. So in terms of pros, we are gaining some code and infrastructure upgrades. We are increasing square footage and capacity, getting up to those numbers that we want to see in a school. We don't have any change to the narrow stairwells. Mr. Geiger mentioned earlier that the vertical circulation's lacking right now in the school. To make this happen, we would need to temporarily remove the 9th grade and relocate the main office during construction. That would allow us less student population in the school to shuffle around to find zones to do construction on. And with that being said, it'd be extremely disruptive phasing for school operations day to day. And this would impact 5 years. That would impact a student throughout their entire high school academic experience. So a student that's starting off in 8th grade would graduate without seeing the completion of that project. Would be complex construction. With renovations, you always have the risk of unforeseen conditions, and we're not addressing that change in the site and traffic issues, as Mr. Geiger mentioned earlier. It'd be challenging to be able to tackle that with the existing floor plan staying as is. Andrew,
Well,
this is
you did a really good job describing that. Kind of took a lot of my talking points. I did just want to point out, we are looking at a probable cost range there of $204 to $213 million. I did just want to point out that those costs would include the hard or construction costs, as well as the typical soft costs that we include as far as design fees, approvals, utilities, furniture, as well as a contingency for the project. And we are also, as this is a 5-year project, potentially that would need another 2 years of design, that we do include an inflation factor into those costs to make sure that we are looking at every possibility for what the district may be spending on this option or concept. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. So looking at our next option, this is our hybrid option. As I mentioned, this is looking at mostly new construction, but trying to find some spaces within the existing building that we could be resourceful and adaptively reuse if possible. So if we look at this option, this is a gross square footage of about 450,000 square feet. That gets us a square footage per student of 150. Again, that targets 165 to about 185. We're looking at adaptively reusing about 32,000 square feet, and you can see in that dotted line area, that's going to encapsulate the existing auditorium and the existing music and choral spaces right to the left of that. And Bill, if you want to talk through the site a little bit here.
Absolutely. If we go to the next slide. So we do make significant changes and sort of betterments to the site. We're able to create an upper parking, a lower parking, which is mainly focused on the bus. So we keep the bus traffic separated from the other traffic. And then we have a lower parking, all related to the 2 entries of the school. You see a lower entry relating to what would be the community zone and the bus, also the lower parking, and then an upper entry which is related to the student drop-off as well. So we're able to take those competing factors that are all now pushed together and put them into their separate lanes. So that should make the daily drop-off and pickup and events much more easier to manage. The concept is really exciting. What it does is we have to look for a spot to build a new school while we maintain the existing school on site. So what we looked at was to create a 4-story academic wing as the first move and connect that across the street, which we continue to have here, to the community wing. And the community wing has the cafeteria, has the auditoriums, and has all the athletics and the physical education. What we do in the first moment is build the 4-story wing. We have some room here for future addition should the district need more space in the future. And then we take down this portion of the school and continue to use the eastern portion of the school. And we build this new community wing that's winged by a bridge. And then in the last phase, if you go to the next slide, we then have the third element, which is to tear down the rest of the school, redo all the parking so that we can get the traffic and the circulation working. We think this is going to take 4 years of time, and it'll happen over 3 phases.
Yes, if you go to the next slide there, again, coming back to our design principles here, in terms of the site, this does work with the existing topography, so building on that upper tier parking lot allows us to utilize that space and work with the tiers of the existing site. Organize the traffic circulation, as Bill just explained, having those separated parking areas and drop-off areas help streamline that traffic. It improves field adjacencies, as you can see here. We are looking at the possibility of maybe taking away some of that parking down by the baseball field to get a marching band field put in. The bonfire would stay in its current location with some green area around that. We're not necessarily enhancing the athletics, so all the athletic facilities on the site would remain as is. Building principles, this checks all the boxes with the exception of that 4-story academic bar that Bill had mentioned. The only way to be able to get all of the students in their classroom spaces from a programmatic standpoint on that tiered parking would require 4 stories on the William Penn side of the site. So looking at this from a pros-cons standpoint, a lot that we just touched on, the new educational environment would be addressed, as well as increased square footage and the coded infrastructure upgrades. That existing, as you can see here in the axon, you have the bridge that comes over from the academic bar over to that community space there. So it becomes a compact building footprint, and it does impact the site to minimal standards, and the athletic effects are minimal as well. We would, in this option, also need to temporarily remove 9th grade and relocate the main office to make that phasing possible, to have all of the students stay and move into the new academic bar while we're wrapping up the other half of the building. So again, this creates very disruptive phasing for school operations. Some traffic issues might still remain here with the entrance points there. And we do have that 4-story academic wing that we had talked about we wanted to avoid in our design principles. Andrew, if you want to speak to.
Yeah, just to add to your points,
Yeah.
that this concept would be very tricky with the phasing. We would have to kind of shut down that main thoroughfare along the front of the building, which would force us to also relocate the main entrance. We'd have to get creative on what we're doing there. The other point to note with this is that is this the option where the auditorium, or is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah.
in this option, we kind of glossed over that a bit, but as you
Yeah.
can see, the hexagon shape that the auditorium currently has, that would remain and become the cafeteria black box, and the space beyond that would become common space and kitchen space as well. So,
Yeah, so
keeping that square footage, but changing the programming of it.
Right, but that would mean at a certain point during the process, the school would be without an auditorium, because we'd be having to renovate one and not yet being able to build the second, because we'd be still part of that complex phasing. So just, some things to think about that would make this a tricky project, but still doable, and still give the district a, kind of a highlight there of a brand new building, a brand new building feel, while still maintaining some of the history of the school as well.
Can I ask a question, or should I wait until the end?
Zayek, are you comfortable with questions now? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's just two real quick on this one, and maybe could you go back to the previous slide? The space, it's hard to see, but where it says William Penn Highway, and then right before the blue is, which is the building, that space there, is that that going to be parking, or is that just thoroughfare, or is that just going to be like basically sidewalk?
Right here, you mean?
Yeah, what would that space become?
That's maintained, it loses a little bit of space, but it's maintained as a thoroughfare, and it becomes, if you go back one slide, or
One
two,
more, sorry.
yeah. Yeah, what it becomes is really the new dropout route, so coming in and then dropping off at the front door there, and then exiting back out.
So that can still be used for vehicular traffic?
Yeah, it's not great for drop-off on in that upper part because the passenger's on the wrong side, so that's
Yeah.
why we have you come down and around.
Okay, so it's pretty much like a
Yeah.
a loop to
Yeah,
get
and
in.
It gives you good distance so that you don't back up.
Okay, yeah, I just was wondering if that, because it's real tight with that.
Yeah.
Don't know if we're using on space. And the other thing, I don't know if it's, is there a zoning issue with going with 4 stories with Palmer Township? I don't know what the township limit is as far as buildings, or if you haven't gotten that far, that's fine. I was just curious of.
We had been looking at, setback requirements and height requirements. We aren't at the final stage of that yet, but we do believe that would fit.
Yeah, we do believe that'll work. There are taller buildings across the street, although they're much older, right, the Dixie Factory. But it is not at the level of the street, it's down at that first parking level, so it takes some of the height out of it.
Brian, they allow you to do, they're allowed to do the average height as well.
Yeah. No, that was good.
Yeah, if you move forward a few slides in that, one more. Thank you so much. If you look in that axon here, you can see how we have that tiered upper parking, so it has that leveling to it. So we're working with that grade. So when you're at that lowest level and then coming to the top level, it's not like you're 4 stories at William Penn. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Unfortunately, on this slide, it's on the opposite side here, so it's on this face.
If you just go back.
Yeah, if you go back one. And so you would have one entrance here and one entrance here. Yeah. There's 2 sort of asterisks. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, so a main office and then an athletics. This whole portion of the school would be considered the community zone, except for the upper floors, because these upper floors do come across. That would be open, as the district wants to allow access in for people to use it. So it's possible that you can have the community zone open full, everything working, auditorium, gymnasium, cafeteria, natatorium, and not have any access to the academics. So it provides a nice security zone.
Are we good to move to the next option? All right. So we move forward.
Again, Michelle, I'll just make one comment
Yeah,
before we move on.
you can go, Mr.
Just to the question. So obviously, we've not looked at any type of traffic. We haven't even gotten to that conversation. We didn't want to move forward with anything. Should the board decide, hey, this is not something we want to do, or could you consider this? We'd certainly start having that conversation. But we also want to provide the board at least some conceptual ideas of what we'd recommend maybe moving forward. So all of those questions would be analyzed as we move forward and brought back to you as a response. Sure.
Yeah. So looking at a third concept, this is when we get into full new construction. So we wouldn't be maintaining any of the existing building here, but we're calling this the upper lot option. And if you move to the next slide, it should look pretty familiar because we're looking at the same site and floor area as we were in the previous option, except in this option that 32,000 square feet of the existing auditorium we're not going to keep. We're going to remove that and look at a fully clean slate new construction. And that would be about 425,000 square feet with about a square foot per student of 140. Again, once we have our projected totals of where the future of the district might go, that square footage can shift a little bit here and there to accommodate that. But we're still working off of that 3,020 number here. So this would be all new construction with a similar site and building layout as the previous option, with a few exceptions that Bill will talk through for you.
Yeah, we'll go to the next slide. The two schemes are really similar looking, right? But they act a little differently. From the site perspective, they're very much the same. The same circulation for people dropping off to the same possible locations for the two offices. We get the upper parking, the lower parking with the bus, and then the lower parking area. What's different on this concept is because it's all new construction, we're able to get a smaller, more compact footprint, which cuts down on the travel times between classes. Another thing that we're able to do is come across here with a double-loaded corridor, so connecting the academics and bringing that above the sort of community zone here. So it makes for probably a very condensed version of the school, reducing traffic or travel times for students, but still giving you close proximity within the building to everything. Similar construction time and phasing, and as Andrew said last time, this portion of the road would be closed during construction. So that really affects the feel and the experience of the site while you're doing it. And the reason we need to do that is the sort of the space that's allowed, the clearances are narrow. So for a margin of safety, we need to build that 4-story structure and keep people away from that roadway. But again, 3 phases, the first phase with the 4-story building, the second phase with the community, and then the third phase takes care of all the new parking while we tear down the rest of the school.
Again, so coming back to our touch point of those site and building principles, similar principles have been addressed in this option as the previous option. We'd be looking at achieving everything in our site principles with the exception of enhancing any athletics, and the building principles, everything with the exception of we're still not getting that 3-story building. We're looking at a compact site right now, and in order to achieve that, it's going to need to be 4 stories. But we are, to Bill's point, going to get an organized layout and circulation. We are enhancing the academic environment of the school. The community space is all in one area, so as we addressed Mrs. Hess's questions, we should have all of that in one organized space, and that also gives the security for the school. And future academic needs, I know we glossed over in this option, but that area to the left there, we can expand any additional academic space that would be needed for the district in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. We are accounting for that now. So again, and if you look at this axon too, you can see you still have that bridge over the road on those upper levels to get to the community bar of the building. The new building is all up to code and brand new infrastructure. You are increasing the square footage and capacity. This does have minimal site and athletic effects during construction in terms of the full 81 acres of the site. New educational environment and a compact building footprint. Similar cons as before, as we talked about through phasing, that this would need to remove the grade 9 temporarily. It does disrupt the day-to-day operations for the school and closing that road with traffic issues. And again, we were looking at that 4-year timeline here. So again, when you talk about students coming up through the high school, there's an opportunity that a student could experience this construction throughout their entire high school career and never see the benefits of it at the end. Andrew, anything for you?
Not on that one. I'll have more to add on the.
All right.
The last
Yeah, you want the good one. All right. So looking at this fourth option, this is a bit new on the site here, so we'll orient ourselves as we look at this on the next slide. This is what we're calling a lower lot option. So if you are looking at the site here, we're going to be completely demoing the existing building, and we will be building new down by the baseball field as you're looking on that ramp off of 22 for 25th Street, further away from William Penn and the previous options. So this would be exact same square footage as the previous new construction option of 425,000 square feet with 140 square foot per student.
And then next slide, please. We're able to achieve a lot of what we set off in our goals with this, and primarily on the site. The first thing that has to happen is we relocate the baseball field down there. That does something nice. It gives us a building site where we can build an entirely new school and maintain an existing school all in the same site. But it also brings the hitting and pitching teams together into one area. So that should be a little bit of a benefit for the coaching and the sort of interaction of those teams. We're able to achieve 2 entranceways and bring both student drop-off and buses to a front door almost on the same area. So that's really nice, right? Everyone's kind of arriving at the same place. We get a large area for bus distribution for pickup in the afternoon, and then we get our upper parking, and then we have existing parking. And we've worked in the tennis courts in this zone and possible additional fields that will support the physical education aspects of the school. So the school's, again, broken down into 2 aspects, community and academics. We get a bar of community spaces here, and we get an academic loop here. And these 2 lighter gray or lighter colors show the future expansion. So what works out really nice is that the athletics is close to the athletics. In this zone, we get a cafeteria in the middle with an auditorium. So as a community event space, it's excellent because the cafeteria is that space that allows people to move and flow and get food and talk to people. You can have a bunch of things going on, and that gives you that flex space that you really need. At the same time, the cafeteria is very close to the academic wing. The academic loop is really a great thing. It's 3 stories, and it has room for future expansion. It creates a secure interior courtyard space for learning, and at the same time, it's reducing the travel times on the site by keeping everything nice and compact in this zone. We get some bonus spaces because we think, the auditorium and the band in this zone, we can get a marching practice field out there on that end. And at the same time, we get just all the vehicles arriving at the front door, which is really pretty nice. And we maintain a school on the site. If we go to the next slide, that really has considerable impact on the longevity of the construction, 3 years, so it doesn't take up a whole high school student's time, and in 2 phases. So the first phase is we build the school, the second phase is we tear down the old school and we redo the site. Also in the first phase, the first thing we have to do is relocate the baseball.
So again, coming back to that site and building principles, this checks all the boxes. It really does. I mean, we're maintaining the existing topography with working with that lower portion of the site. We're organizing the traffic circulation. We're improving field adjacencies, and we're enhancing the athletics. To Bill's point earlier, we're going to have new tennis courts. We're going to have the athletics, a gym, the lockers very close to the stadium, a new baseball field for hitting and pitching sports, and a marching band field that would be directly adjacent to the band room so that the students don't have to lug their large instruments very far. When you're looking at the building principles, we are going to maintain that 3-story building, which is ideal for vertical circulation, and the rest of the layout and circulation will be neatly organized in that looping corridor that Bill had talked through. Enhancing the academic environment. Community spaces will be on that closer side to Route 22 there, so that when you're thinking about any branding opportunities from the highway, it has a great highway presence when you're coming into Easton from the New Jersey side or leaving the Pennsylvania side. This is something you're going to want to see here. This is going to be the epitome of education in the Lehigh Valley, and you're going to want to see it. You're going to have secure entrance points, as Bill talked about, and again, if you wanted to break that academic and community security, you can. And future academic needs can be addressed in that lower area there if we wanted to extend off of that looping circulation for future classrooms and any other time in the future.
Okay.
And then in terms of pros and cons, lots of pros, not many cons. A lot of the same ones that we had talked about before. The difference here is that we have that secured outdoor learning and that courtyard light well area that also allows for windows for all the academic spaces. Traffic improvements here, to Bill's point, we have everybody coming to the main entrance but in separate zones, which is really nice. The new baseball field and tennis courts is an improvement for the district's athletics. And the only con here is that this is the option that is addressing athletics, which means that there is going to be a site impact cost associated with that. And I'll let Andrew talk to any other points that he may have here.
Yeah, so again, a much more straightforward phasing and construction plan for this option. You know, obviously they mentioned there's some upfront things that we need to do. One thing that we would still kind of need to figure out is what would happen to the tennis courts during construction. But that is something that, you know, we are currently thinking about, and if the board, you know, had us pursue these options, we could definitely have more definitive answers for you on that. This one, you know, if you were to look back, or you'll see on the next slide, really is the comparison of the four concepts here and what those probable costs would be. So actually, if you can jump to the next slide. So options 3 and 4, or concepts 3 and 4, are approximately the same costs. With concept 3, there is more aggressive phasing, and that's why that one cost would be there, where you don't have that with concept 4, but the additional site work costs kind of equal out what that phasing might be. But again, on this slide, you can see, you know, just as we went through that presentation, Alloy did a great job there. You can see the number of checks on the left versus the number of checks on the right, vice versa. The issues that you might deal with a project of this scope, you know, is really maximized with options 3 and 4. Just from a building square footage standpoint, you can see how with, you know, concept number 1, you start with the largest building there, and really that is just due to the inefficiencies of the existing building. With that renovation, there's, you know, we're upgrading the spaces, right? We're making the classrooms modern, but it's difficult to address that circulation. So, you know, we have to add much more square footage to that building to get the same efficiencies that you might get out of concepts 3 or 4, where you could knock off about 75,000 square feet of real estate there. Again, these are just concepts. Nothing is written in stone at this point. But I think it's exciting. It gives, you know, a lot of good opportunity, you know, for us to analyze further if needed. And I really want to thank Michelle and Bill and Randy for going through and leading, you know, this discussion here and a lot of the meetings that we've been having over the past few months.
If you would move to the next slide real quick. We'll circle back to the slide that Andrew was just speaking to, because I think that slide gives a great impact as to these concepts and what we're presenting to the board here tonight. But I don't want to go without speaking about any potential next steps. And as we talked about at the top of the presentation, we're going to review enrollment findings a bit more in detail and try to figure out what is the actual estimated growth or decline of the district as we move forward. And we're really looking forward to hearing your feedback, hopefully in the next meeting in May. And sometime this summer, we'd really love to see approval to start to begin to establish a timeline. Again, the timelines that we have in front of you are the construction timelines, not the design timeline that requires for us to design any of these concepts or anything else that the district would like for us to explore. So the sooner we could get that started, the better. Site and traffic study, I know Randy had mentioned this real quick. We'd start to look at that a little bit more, get a consultant on board and talk through the civil end of things. End user meetings, we really want to make sure that we're talking with the end users, Mr. Geiger's team at the high school and other members in the design committee. And we'd continue our design meetings with our group bi-weekly, community outreach, whether it be with the board or community members, parents, students, et cetera. We want to hear their input. It's important. It's their building ultimately, and it's what they're going to have for their educational experience. We want to make sure it's the best space for them. And we'll continue to attend board meetings and answer any questions or comments that the board has for us here.
Yes, just two things. One, none of these plans interfere with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial there, that's correct?
They do not, no.
They do
Yeah.
not,
Could
okay.
you go back a slide? This is a better slide to stay on here.
Yeah, I see it on there. I
Yes.
could figure out what it was.
Yes.
I just.
That, and then the bonfire remains the same in each option as well as,
Close, moves a little bit in
in 4.
yeah, but
And
generally in the same location.
I only have one more question
Yeah,
right
of
now
course.
with 4. If you could go back to the 4 design, please.
Yeah, so go back to another slide or two.
Go back one more. You have the marching band there.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's some sort of access road that's going around it, that gray.
Yes.
So they're not like pinned back there having to go through the building. We have a large band. We have 300
Correct.
students. So
Yes.
there's a way to get back through there for drop off, pick up
Yeah.
equipment.
Yep,
things
so in
like-
each option 2, 3, and 4, where we're addressing the site, we would look at getting an access road around the entirety of the building footprint. Not in option 1, because we're working with the existing building as it remains.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Of
I don't want to
course.
hold up the rest of the board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, so I know that wasn't something we highlighted in this presentation, but there is an auditorium in all 4 options. Yes.
A completely new one.
Yes, a new
Yeah,
one.
Yeah,
No.
just to add,
Yes.
in every option, including option 1,
Yes.
it would be a new,
Yeah.
new auditorium, 6, 8 lane, to satisfy the district.
Yes.
I'd like to know how many other high schools you've designed for that has a spot for the bonfire.
This is our first. I always like to do things first, so this is great. Yes.
That was a point of contention.
Yeah.
A couple meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Michelle, I certainly want to allow some more questions, but when we vetted this through our B&G committee, I thought they asked some good questions.
Yeah.
And I just want to kind of, I think it's good for everybody to hear the same answers.
Yeah.
When you started this presentation, you stated that the recommended square footage is about 185. That's what you like to see. But our options here are generally 140.
Yeah.
So why the discrepancy?
Right. So again, we'll be able to get you an actual number when we have our enrollment findings back. But we're looking at a more efficient layout for a space. So that 185, it's typically something you'll see in a school district that isn't as unique as Easton, where it's having 3,000 students in it of the entire city and beyond. So with that in mind, this will be an efficient 140 plus or minus square foot per student, as opposed to not necessarily an inefficient one, but the way that we can work with the layouts here, particularly for these 2 new options, that 425,000 square feet, we'd be able to give ourselves a more efficient square foot per student there, as well as the building capacity. We'd like to, again, maintain that 85% as our target, and that would be an efficient 85% target.
Yeah, and
Andrew,
just-
you came up behind
sorry.
me.
I mean, one of the big things with that too is just trying to be cost conscious as well. If we were to design a building for 180 square foot
Right.
per student, that would really be driving the cost even further up from what you can see in front of you.
Yeah, and I think to that first option, you might see, again, to Andrew's point, that was 500,000 square feet, and that did drive up that square foot per student. But that's not changing. In that option, the classrooms that we toured and saw, those footprints are staying as is. We can't start knocking down all of those walls and changing all of those spaces. So when you're thinking, sure, the square footage overall might be a little higher per student, that's accommodating the common space that we're including and the new gym and auditorium. That's not the space that students are in all day, every day, which is those classroom spaces. And in these options, that's going to be a better square foot per student than you might see in that first option, though it might be a greater square foot per student number.
Okay, I just have one more question.
Go.
So I know I found myself doing this often as well.
Yeah.
So I know when we were seeing our meetings, there, at least me sometimes say, well, why not this? Well, why not this?
Mhm.
And I found myself sometimes saying, okay, well, let's go down the rabbit hole a little bit and
Right.
saying, well, how about this example?
Yeah.
So just for everyone's knowledge, I would estimate that we went through probably 12 to 15 conceptual designs. Right, and one of the questions that came up last week, and I've asked, Mr. Case, if you wouldn't mind just kind of addressing it, but feel free, Michelle, Andrew, whoever, why didn't we look at the other side, or is there less of an impact if we would take that concept, for example, and shift it over to the other side? That was one of the things that we talked about, also a question that was asked.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I can step in for that one.
Oh.
Make sure, because this was my question, so you're talking the parking lot up top here, and like where
Yeah, so taking the actual L building, right, and putting it over towards, and going west on this map here. So going over towards Hartley and Greenwood.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking more of where we had the tiered part on the parking lot and then across from the turf, that right next to the softball fields.
That
the
green
open
space right there.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
like that zone.
Yeah, so
No,
it was other
Jody, are
questions
you-
too, Jody, that was asked, so that's why, any of those options, Andrew, like what do we consider, why didn't we consider those?
So, one of the main things was just, having the building down on the Kunkel complex in general. And what that may lead into is when that project happened, there were quite a few sinkholes that popped up. So it's one thing that we're trying to keep in mind. Not to say that we wouldn't experience any on any other parts of the site. That this area is just is crazy with that. But what we would start to do is potentially be affecting more of the fields and more of the site at one time, which would increase the costs of having to relocate that. Once the construction is done and the school is demolished, putting more fields back into certain spots. So we were trying to maintain as much of the left-hand side of that site without impact to that, to keep costs down. If it's something that the board would like to see, we can certainly explore other options. Again, none of these are set in stone. It's just what we had seen as a team as some of the best concepts that we could bring to you at the time.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm not sure how in-depth you got about that, but yeah, if we were looking at that option over there, we'd be limited on where parking would be. And I think we did the calculation in the office, and if you were to be in that area over there, but parking maybe where we're kind of calling out that lower parking area by the baseball field, some students or staff could be walking up to 3/4 of a mile to get to their building.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Before,
Mhm.
you had your park and you're all the way down parked at that end and you're because that's my other question is even looking at it of, the distance of walking, it's almost walking from the top tier down to the baseball field and,
Right.
So yeah, as part of the design, we would obviously be bringing in a traffic consultant. I don't think at this point we have a total number of allotted spaces for these areas. So we would have to look to see how many exactly would be fitting in those those new upper lots and lower lots, as far as what the current parking capacity is versus what the proposed would be.
And I think the difference with what the school currently has right now, as you can see outlined in the yellow, we didn't necessarily get into this detail here, but that's sidewalks available so that the students are never going to be walking through parking lots like they currently do in the tiered parking lot, and then down through the main traffic area where student drop-off is and buses. Or coming from the other side. I know Mr. Geiger's mentioned that sometimes parents won't want to bother with this line, so they'll drop off students at other parking lots and they're crossing these major thoroughfares to get there. This would contain everyone within the site and have safe sidewalks available for students to get to and from the building. And to Andrew's point, the hope would be that existing parking that's tiered wouldn't necessarily have to be dedicated to all of the students, and they could get a little closer proximity to the building. But if we looked at that left area of the building, we'd be a little more limited on how close the students can get to the building to park and get in.
Also, some other things to consider if this was a design concept that we would continue to look at would be really important, the end user meetings. I mean, that's going to be the most important driver going forward. So athletics would be a part of those end user meetings, and looking at the fields and the location to the building and what they would be and how that they would be impacted. Other things to consider is there are existing utilities down by that freshman baseball field that were put in even back when those fields were initially designed to accommodate future needs for athletic teams down there. So included in this concept, we could also look at a space down there that those teams could utilize. We did that for the track and the bathrooms and the concession stand there. So there could be an opportunity within the end user meetings and as the design will get refined, to address those issues. But again, it's really important that, those meetings with the end users so that it would drive the design. So we make sure we address, the needs of athletics on the C&I side or the different departments within the high school.
about those things, not talk about athletics. When you talk about currently where the high school is and where the training rooms are, and there's someone injured and having to take the cart to go down to the, and so, you know, like, I'm just looking at where the facility would be and the extent of what it would take to get, again, all the way to the other end.
Well, Ken, if I'm interpreting correctly what you're saying, we would have the opportunity to consider a structure, let's call it, at the west end of this campus that might allow for an athletic training facility, for example, or at the minimum bathrooms, you know, and concession stand type situation, right? Is that-
Yeah, absolutely
okay.
correct. And that could be, you know, a part of, you know, that baseball field relocation,
Mhm.
you know, whatever that would look like at that time. It could be added into design, correct?
Yeah. And the access road that goes through would allow for, if you have athletic, like Gators or something like that, to transfer a student back to the health suite and the athletic trainer's office within the building if an additional structure wasn't occurred at that time.
We're currently doing that for another school district where they had a similar situation where they had an existing school and they're doing an athletics master plan. And so bringing some of that stuff out to where the sports is was important. But we were staying mainly focused on trying to figure out a way, can we get a new school on the site and what are those concepts? But, you know, as you have each conversation, it becomes a richer and richer thing. So, you know, we start to add all that to the stew and see what comes up.
Any other questions? Mr. Ziadek, I think we had a few more from buildings and grounds.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Before we open up for final
Yeah.
questions and discussions, Mr. Sokolowski.
Yes.
You know what I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I'm ready.
So I don't need to ask it. I'll just defer to you.
Sure. Looked at some of the costs, had Ken Phillips from Raymond James, our financing people, to help me out do it. And these are very, I mean, estimates, just so you realize. Option one, obviously, if you were to look at that option, you're looking at 0.75 mils every year just to cover the debt for 8 years. And then 1 year would be 0.28. That's just to cover the debt of that project. Option two, that's the most expensive option. It'd be 1.16 mils for 5 years and 0.36 approximately for 4 years, just to cover the debt. That doesn't include increase in any other operating expenses. The last two options is 1.1 mils, 5 years, and 0.34 for 4 years. So, I mean, when we do budget, obviously, you'd have to say, okay, this year, the index is 3.61, so if you looked at option 3 or 4, the millage increase is 3.61, Act 1 index is 5.4%, sorry about that. So of that 3.61, if we were doing it this year, 1.10 mils would have to be automatically raised for tax just to cover the project before operating expenses. So, and that's in today's environment. I mean, as the numbers change and so forth, the environment will change too. So I mean, that's, unfortunately, I'm gloom and doom, but.
Well, you've seen the project costs increase exponentially recently too.
Right. So, yeah, they're seeing, from my finance people, they're seeing 25% increases in projects across the board. So it's not just here. So as you progress, it'll be easier to calculate, okay, here's what we're looking at for financing if you proceed whatever concept or whatever you're going to do in the future.
Appreciate that, Mike. So, you know, obviously the goal this evening, as I mentioned in the beginning, was to not necessarily make a decision. It's just a lot to digest, right? So, a lot to synthesize. But we would appreciate at the May meeting if we could come back and revisit this and have some dialogue. We'll certainly, you know, have our teams here again to answer any questions, any further clarification. But what we would be looking for then in that May meeting is, you know, how does the board want to proceed? Is that, you know, are we talking about a renovation? Are we talking about just projects? Are we talking about maybe digging deeper into a different concept, like concept 3 or 4, that we can explore at a deeper level? That's the guidance that we're going to need to move forward or not move forward in any capacity. So we just felt it was important that we took a pause. We presented this tonight. and we didn't get too far down that road, and then we can certainly revisit. So with that being said, any other questions or final comments or suggestions, thoughts?
I don't have any questions. I would just like to say, as usual, this is really, really excellent work from Dewey and Alloy 5 and Kyle and all his team and everyone at the district admin level. This slide alone is amazing, in addition to all of the visuals that you've provided for us to start thinking it out. So I really, really appreciate all of this work, and I think we have some really excellent options to consider. So thank you for that.
I would like to thank the leadership at the high school, the staff, and the students, everyone there, for what they do in the building that they currently have, for the programs, the athletic department, everything that's happening at the high school right now, and what they're able to accomplish with what they have. Thank you for scheduling the tour, because it was a real eye-opener for me to see what they're working with. And so even having this presentation here to really imagine the optimal space for the high school it's exciting. I know we don't want to think about the literal cost of taking on something like this, but I just want everybody to really consider, we saw, students from the high school, even what they do, and imagine the students coming up, the students behind them, what they get if we consider doing this is exciting. Even going through and being able to go to most of the buildings that we have, even Cheston and, the Palmer building that it's doing now, and seeing what the elementary schools get, and then just to imagine what they continue to get once we decide on what we're doing for the future of Easton is really exciting.
It is.
Anybody else right now? Okay. Thank you so much. That's just one.
That was item
part.
A.
That
was item A. So
that was just one thing.
we did not. The other ones will go much quicker, I promise. We did shift around very last minute the two next items. So because Andrew's here, we just want to talk about the natatorium and the project itself, and just an update for the board on where we are.
Yeah. So as you said, much quicker update for this one than item A here. We are still going through the design, working with our consultant for the upgrades to the drainage and circulation or recirculation and filtration of the pool. Unfortunately, we are at the point where we are not going to be able to be bringing bids to you for next month. However, the anticipation is that we're working for approval in the May timeframe. We'll keep you updated as we go forward. There were just some complexities that we were seeing, and it's very important that we take a look at this, have everything clearly and correctly identified on the contract documents when we go out to bid, so that we get the best product available. And we are still anticipating having this completed prior to the start of swim season, so that we can maintain what the district is currently doing, and then with hopes that gym and PE classes would be able to use it at that time as well.
Any questions on that? No? Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you to the Alloy team and Dewey team as well for being here. Really appreciate the presentation. It was awesome. So moving down to the Future Think Enrollment Projection Study, this is something that the Buildings and Grounds team has actually discussed for over a year now. And we just felt like now is the time to do this and make the recommendation. As you heard Michelle refer to the enrollment from PDE, we also believe from a Buildings and Grounds perspective that those numbers may not be necessarily as accurate as what we think they may be, and now's the time to get a second set of eyes on that. So reached out to a few different companies that came recommended to us. We are recommending as a team the Future Think Enrollment Projection Study. That comes actually recommended us to by the most schools that we spoke to, and is the cheapest price, just to be upfront. So that is about a $13,000 investment, and that will give us school-by-school projections as well, not just the high school, but wanted to include that here for you in conjunction with the presentation this evening for the high school. So that will be on the agenda for a recommendation. Anything I can answer there? Thank you. Yep. So the last time that we actually had this was 2014, and the company that we used, just to give a quick estimate, it was about $16,000 back then in 2014. So this study is approximately $3,000 cheaper, almost 10 years later. So thank you, Jody. I appreciate that. Any other questions I can answer there?
Why can't I see the? Oh, never mind. I have to open
It
it.
won't scroll down.
Yeah, I'm just getting the cover sheet on
Yeah.
that.
On the actual attachment?
Future.
Yeah, it's just one page. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure to get that. I'll make sure to relist that then, Meg.
Okay.
It's 11 pages, Josh.
It's
but
like
you
it's
won't
a
see the
screen.
first
But
page.
it's frozen?
It's like it's
Yeah,
a screenshot,
okay.
not a.
No problem.
I don't-
I'll make sure to readjust that.
I can't. No, it won't do anything.
Must be your fault because hers opened.
It opens?
Well,
User error, me and you.
No, I can't. Yeah, I know.
So she opens it. Okay, we'll take care of it. So, actually, Gino, can you do me a favor? Can you actually click on the link in the presentation? The Future Think? Yeah, just hover over that for me. It should link out. Control click.
I think it was on the agenda with attachments.
Can you scroll?
Yep, but mine's like a picture of that
Yeah.
front
So
page.
she is the first page.
Yeah.
So you can scroll down a little bit, Gino. Maybe like to keep going, keep going. Those are all the districts that she's worked with. Just keep going, Gino, if you don't mind. Couple more, couple more. There's a proposal at the very bottom. Right there. Next one up. Right there. So there's the projection study. So they're actually collecting the last 10 years of enrollment, birth counts, migration, population, building permits over the last 10 years too. So they're going to utilize all that to develop those projections, whereas PDE generally just is a static rollover of numbers. So however many kids you see in first grade, that's the number that they use for second grade, right, in those projections. So this is a little bit more dynamic, but we'll make sure we load that then Meg, on the board docs as well.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Gino.
you.
Andrew. Okay, district-wide PA speaker system update. So if you remember the last few meetings, we've had this conversation that we were looking at upgrading the speaker system district-wide in systemic fashion. Originally, when we looked at this as a capital project, we were looking into it as almost kind of getting rid of it all and redoing it from ground up. That estimate was coming in $2 million to do everything from the ground up and new. But what I will say is that, and this is a thank you to Ken and Katie Vitro, who may have just left. Ken and Katie have been working with a company probably since August or September this past summer, and they've been going building by building to see what's needed to upgrade our speaker system across the district so that all our schools operate on the same type of system, and every school is different. You know, some schools might need this renovation, this one needs this. So over the past few months, Ken and Katie have been working with this. Ken recently met with the consultant that we utilize, and the good news is that after all of that assessment was done, it will be between $300,000 and $400,000. That's a big difference. So it is not ESSERS. We cannot use ESSERS for it. We've tried multiple times and have been denied multiple times. So we will be utilizing, recommending the capital reserve, to which, Mike, I think if I remember correctly, probably about $3.1 million left in there, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Give or take 100,000. So that would be the recommendation. We did not get the well, we lied. We have it as of today. Right before this meeting, we got an updated quote, so we could not add it to this agenda quickly enough. But we are estimating between $300,000 and $400,000. So Ken, I want to defer to you for this a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the vendor that we reached out to is Keystone Fire Protection. They're formerly CSI. They do a lot of work and help us out in the district. It would be a district-wide system, Nyquist system. It's actually currently being installed at Palmer. So like Mr. Ziadik said, all of our communication hubs in all of our buildings would align, and that offers us some ability on the safety security side that I know Mr. Romali was excited to see and hear about. So like Mr. Ziatek said, we just received that quote, so we want to make sure that we review that and make sure that it will work and tie in with our existing phone system and some of the other systems within the district. So we're going to look to get that reviewed and get it back to the board as soon as possible so we can start moving forward with the district-wide project if the board so chooses.
Appreciate that, Ken. And we would be looking to put that on the April 18th board agenda if we can get that back and reviewed, obviously, from our solicitor as well. So that is something to look forward to. Questions on any of the PA speaker system? Okay. And the last one, Ken, just for clarification, for the board purpose and community watching, we did end up switching this document. We had to provide an updated document again prior to this meeting that we did get a chance to update. So you'll see, if you looked at it last night, it'll be a little different than what it is right now. So being a standing committee, we wanted to make sure it was accurate so we can discuss the accuracy of it. But it's in regard to a service contract for Cheston specifically.
Yeah, thank you for noting that. So this time of year in the maintenance department, we look at all of our service contracts, and we're currently looking at our elevator contracts. Currently, we're contracted with TK Elevator. This service contract is specifically for Cheston. Cheston obviously has one of our newer elevators in district. It is a traction elevator, which is a little different than the others that we have district-wide. So it's important looking at some of the items that are included within this service agreement that were not included with the TK agreement, specifically for the traction elevator. There is a monthly fee that you can see there on the attachment, and it is a 5-year, 3-month contract. We're trying to get all our service contracts to align district-wide, especially within each piece of equipment. So this service contract includes replacement of wear and tear parts that we currently don't have in our TK service contract, which is really important, especially with the traction elevator, the belt system, and then adjustments. Otis, who this service contract is with, they are the manufacturer and we're the installer of the elevator, so all of the warranties would obviously then continue on and move forward, which is also important. We will be coming to the board with the service contract for the remaining elevators in the district. Like we would be looking to present that in May.
But this service contract can at April 18th.
Correct. Any questions? Thank you.
That sums it up.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So do we have anybody from the public that would like to come up and be heard? Seeing no one, thank you.
You don't have to sit in the back row.
Okay. I think, we're jumping backwards in time now, is that correct?
Athletics.
So we're gonna go to athletics, and Mr. Whitman, I'm not sure if he's still on a computer, so, that's all right, we'll turn it over to Dr. Baltz.
All right, so tonight the only thing I have for you is to go through our winter athletics presentation. The last time we saw a season report, it was Mr. Perkrivzak delivering his last back in January, so this will be my first end of season report, so we'll just jump right into it. A lot of this will seem familiar. I'm utilizing his format, at least for now. The Interscholastic Athletics Disclosure Act information has not changed. That's still the update that we had from the beginning of the year. I'll note, secondly, there you see our EPC Student Athlete Character Council representatives, and one of those was here tonight with Jenna Broadhead, Lauren Gallagher, so she's one of our senior representatives. That group continues to meet regularly with representatives from across the league. Later this month, they will be filming a commercial at Easton High School, league-wide, on sportsmanship for the entire league. So we're looking forward to that production taking place on our campus later on this spring. Much like a couple of the items that Mr. Ziatek just noted, we just got the information finalized today on EPC scholar athletes for the winter, so that will be reflected in the next report, but wanted to make sure that I noted and explained why that information isn't there on this particular report. So I can't give you an EPC overall yet because we just put them in for our school today. So that is to be continued as well. Our FCA group continues to meet at the high school in the mornings. They continue to average 15 to 20 students weekly. There's a real strong group of leaders that are there and involved and beginning to network with schools around the Lehigh Valley that have FCA groups as well. A couple of updates from during the winter season, although the sports will span all 3 seasons related to our volunteer work and community service in the athletic department. The baseball program continued their tradition of donating and delivering Christmas trees and ornaments to families around the district. Cheerleading, who probably has the longest athletic season of any team, going all the way back to summer, has had youth clinics, trunk or treat. They ran their St. Luke's Breast Cancer Research Night from the fall at one of our football games, continued with donations to local families at Thanksgiving, and volunteered at the Rotary basketball tournament in December. One of the neat things that I was able to talk through with Coach Karam at the end of the season was our boys wrestling team going and repainting the Easton Saints wrestling room at the Easton Area Community Center. Some people will remember it as the St. Anthony's Community Center. So they actually went in as a group and repainted their wrestling room as the program got restarted this winter. During the winter, we just had a couple things here to note on Officials Appreciation Week, which this week is actually Officials Appreciation Week for the spring sports. So boys basketball actually stopped the entire event before their game, and Coach Jacobs took the mic at center court to address the whole crowd related to acknowledging our officials and giving them a round of applause prior to a game. Swimming and diving has, year in and year out, recognized the officials and given them some Wawa gift cards and a little gift bag before some events. So that's just a couple of the things that we had related to officials. Our participation in our athletic programs, I think this is a calling card of Easton, but something that we should be proud of and something that we've been able to maintain where that may not be the case in every district. Our participation continues to be extremely strong, being able to field competitive teams at every level within each sport. So you can see our numbers continue, and I see the formatting has jumped all over on me from what I thought it turned in, but it happens. So cheerleading still very strong. They had a season with 55 girls as a part of the cheering program through the middle school, through varsity levels. Boys basketball with 73 participants on the 5 different teams that we field there, and 60 girls on the 5 teams that we field in girls basketball. Swimming and diving, for anybody who was at our varsity E-night, their program took up the entire length of the gym when they were highlighting theirs. And it was neat to see Coach Ellis rattle off every single kid's name like clockwork through the entire teams. It was awesome. But their performance, and as we mentioned the natatorium earlier, the number of participants we have involved in swimming and the flexibility they show to be able to achieve in their sport, whether it's practicing before school, multiple sessions after school, doing the best to maximize everything they can do in their facility with numbers that we have is an awesome thing to see. Indoor track and field, another strong winter with 82 participants. Our boys wrestling program with just shy of 60, and girls varsity wrestling with 15 participants. So this is pretty much on par with where we are at with just about 400 winter athletes. Some of the highlights, and I know I've brought some of these up in much more graphic fashion before with some of the artwork and stuff we do on social media, but some highlights of the cheering season. They were District 11 champions. They were 6th place in the state, which is one of the highest finishes we've had since competitive spirit has become a PIAA sport. And they'll have a number of girls there. You'll see 4 of our cheerleaders representing the team of the Big 33 game in May, and we are still awaiting anyone who may be selected to be part of the McDonald's game that's held each year in Nazareth. Boys basketball team finished with a program record of 61 and 69 this winter, and you can see there's definitely, if you would have looked at last year's numbers and then where we were at, particularly in our feeder levels, there's been significant growth there in success. So we're taking a step forward with that program. Girls basketball
We highlighted them at our last meeting, but clearly they are continuing to go strong, and there does not seem to be an end in sight with the success that we have there. In particular, we noted last meeting we had an undefeated regular season and finished 28-2 at the varsity level. They had a rough one at the JV level. They were 21-1. So they're strong and only going to continue to be so moving forward. Taking a look at indoor track and field, they had 10 different events that they entered. They do a lot of traveling. The commitment that our coaches show there, where it's overnights or it's very long days traveling all over the place to go to these meets, whether it's Staten Island or Manhattan, Penn State. So they've done a phenomenal job with that group. We had 6 athletes who participated in national meets just a couple weeks ago. Boys and girls swimming and diving, both strong finishes, and we recorded our first ever PIAA girls diving medalist in school history this winter. Varsity wrestling, taking another step forward with that program, we finished 3rd in District 11, 3rd at the Northeast Regionals, and had a number of wrestlers both qualify and place at states. It's also an important thing to note, we had the 3rd most state qualifying individual wrestlers of any program in the state. So in each of those 3rd places, we finished behind the same 2 teams, Bethlehem Catholic and Nazareth, on each of those. But a strong season from the JV team. They finished 1st place in District 11. Junior high teams fielding both. A lot of kids were given an opportunity to compete there, and we finished 5th at the junior high tournament with our red team. Varsity girls wrestling attended 11 competitions. They had 4 qualify for the state tournament, and Aubrey Kraser brought home her 2nd consecutive undefeated season, 2nd consecutive state championship, and she is only a sophomore. So overall for the winter, we were 199 and 132 and 1 with a winning percentage of 60%. Again, just a couple of those individual awards. I just mentioned Aubrey. Madison Kennard was our District 11 2nd place in diving, and she was awarded our 1st state medal in girls diving. Jake Brunetti placed at the District 11 meet as well, and Coach Matt Ellis on the swimming front earned his 200th win as head coach at Easton. Went through a lot of these previously too, so I'll run through them quickly. These were the individuals who placed at the state meet at the indoor track and field. At Penn State, Aaron Vincent, Odin Ferenczi, Sam Chidester, Jaden Ikoko, and Maggie Scalzo. They all also competed in national meets this winter. Those are just a sample size. There's plenty more. I would just invite you to make sure you're following us on Twitter, because I try to get these graphics out as much as possible with all the updates, because our kids are doing some amazing things. And rather than making this presentation an additional 25 minutes or so, a whole lot easier to just follow us on Twitter. Academic eligibility at both the high school and middle school have remained the same, with our expectations for what the students need to pass on a weekly basis in order to remain eligible for our athletic participation at both the middle school and high school levels. This is just a breakdown of weekly where we are at. Overall, there was a spike there at the end of December. However, when I went back and reviewed our numbers in comparison to other years, the overall numbers in the end in red basically came out to where we would finish a season in a typical winter season. So although there was a spike in the week of December 22nd, and I know Mr. Prokrivzak and Mr. Geiger sat down and discussed some of that, the overall numbers at the end of the season came out on average where they would be. We continue to try to meet with our students when they are running into issues such as suspensions, academic eligibility, and encouraging our teams to run study halls when possible. This is just another reminder that Mr. Cuck provided to Mr. Prokrivzak at the end of the last school year. All right? I appreciate that help. But our student athletes continue to achieve in the classroom above even the general population, and that's something that obviously we are incredibly proud of within the athletic department. Just a quick synopsis of what's going on the sports medicine front for the winter. We went through 443 physical exams for students that were trying out or trying to participate for our teams for the winter season, including St. Luke's providing doctors for those physicals that we hold on campus. As part of that, we collected $1,660 on those physical exams. Just a quick breakdown of how many athletes are seen by our athletic training department on a regular basis. At the high school, that was 1,248 during the winter season, or an average of 14 athletes per day are seeing our trainers. At the middle school, that's just shy of 450 overall, with 5 students a day being seen by the single trainer that's at the middle school. We continue to have our students complete the impact concussion baseline test through St. Luke's. At this point, and this was a result of COVID, it was moved to being done at home by students on their own personal devices. We're looking to reinstate them doing that in person, just to make sure that the validity of those tests is where we would want it to be moving forward, now that we're not in a position where students need to be doing it at home. We continue to work with local colleges to allow student trainers to continue essentially their student teaching portion of the athletic training program. We currently have 1 student trainer, Cody Yale, who is with us from East Stroudsburg University. We're continuing our long relationship with St. Luke's. We currently have 3 St. Luke's trainers that are with us at the high school. They also provide athletic training coverage when necessary, if we need additional trainers or if there are other events going on. And we have access to their team of doctors and physical therapists on a regular basis, including weekly visits from doctors to provide enhanced evaluations for our student athletes. During the course of the winter, we had 12 insurance forms completed due to injuries, and we continue to have our sports performance provided through St. Luke's with James Farley as well. Mark your calendars. Mr. Geiger and I just kind of tentatively set this date. So on Monday, June 5th at the high school at 12:30 p.m. we're planning on having our collegiate signing ceremony. We're continuing to collect the paperwork on all of that information and make sure we have everything we need to properly honor all of our student athletes that will be continuing at the Division I, Division II, Division III, junior college levels as student athletes. Later this month, we'll have our Wall of Fame banquet. It'll be April 29th. It is at the Estonian. Tickets are currently on sale in the athletic office during business hours. You can visit us at the Easton Area High School Athletic Office and see Mrs. Brado for Wall of Fame tickets. But this is our class of 2023, including our special recognitions of Bob Arntz and Ellis Weitzman, and then a number of different individual inductees as chosen by the Wall of Fame committee for this year. So, athletic department revenue to date, at this point, we are at $141,923.50 of special event, including special event revenue. That's through March. That was football games, special events, basketball, wrestling, etc. And special event revenue specifically at just shy of $11,000. That includes our food trucks, playoff reimbursements, physical exams, tournaments, host fees, etc. This is a little tighter than we would like. Update after the winter season. We are currently leading the Service Electric Challenge Series with Phillipsburg by a score of 8-5 at the varsity level. So no pressure on our spring sports, but it's going to come down to you to make sure that we come out on top and hold on to the trophy that has been in the athletic office at the high school for quite some time. And that is all I have for tonight. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Well done, Doctor.
There's no one.
Anybody in the public wants to speak.
No one here.
Take your word for it.
Okay, so we will move on then to budget and finance, Mr. Snyder.
Yes, thank you. Our subcommittee met last week with Mr. Sokolowski, so I will defer to him for a quick overview of a mix of some informational items and some action items coming up.
Currently, we're reviewing our budget. If you remember last month, we had a deficit of about $10.5 million. We're down to around $7.5 million. What changed since last month? Looking at our tax collection has increased about 95%, which, that helped our budget for next year. And also our subsidy, I looked at bumping our subsidies up from the initial budget from the governor. Obviously, it's an estimated subsidy increase, so I didn't take the 100% increase. It's about a 5% increase I looked at. A 1% tax increase would equal about $1.1 million. I'll be coming before the board. We'll have a meeting on May the 9th for the proposed final budget. Now, what that means is that budget will and can move all the way up till June 20th when you do finally approve that. I'm just looking for a little guidance. Do you want me to leave the $7.5 million deficit in the initial proposed budget and go from there, or put some kind of increase in? Just looking for guidance. If I don't get anything tonight, I will go with the $7.5 million deficit. That deficit would have to come out of our committed fund balance, which is our savings, which we've had over the years. Any thoughts?
What is that at right now?
It's probably about, I'm waiting for my final audit figures, so this year, the year we're operating in, we anticipated a $4.6 million deficit. So the initial committed was $34 million, so figure you're dealing with a $30 million committed fund balance of our reserves. So that would drill that down to about 23, if we go down that route.
Did the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
At this point, he just said, Mr. Snyder asked to open up to the floor. At this point, again, this number will move. The board has the right to do whatever, say yay, nay, or anything between now and June 20th. I'm just trying to get a rough idea.
So Mike, I'm sorry, what specifically are you asking for feedback on the 1%?
The proposed budget right now is at a
0%.
It's a 0%
Okay.
tax increase is what you see there.
Do you want it to remain there, or do you want to propose a tax increase?
I see.
In the next, when
Round.
he shows us the budget
Right,
next time,
okay.
should it show a tax increase, or should it stay at 0 with a $7.5 million deficit?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to show a 2% increase? Do you want to show a 2.5, 1.3, whatever?
Got it.
That's what he's
Okay.
asking for.
So do we have an idea then of what, so at each percentage? Up
Yes.
to whatever to take us, that there is no deficit?
Well, 2% generates $2.2 million. So 7.5 less 2.2, I mean, you just drill it down. 3% is $3.3 million. 4% is $4.4 million. And obviously index is almost $6 million.
Right, so between the 6 million and the 7 million, and we had what, 34? So we're saying about, takes us down to 23.
Yes.
And you said, I'm sorry, 8:30, like I'm having trouble with the numbers. So the 2% increase,
1% is $1.1 million, 2% is $2.2 million, 3% is it's 1.1 per percentage.
percent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, roughly.
You have to make up 7.5, which
Right.
you cannot do with a tax increase.
Right, right.
So
So how much do we want in the tax increase?
Right.
How much do we want in the
you have it.
capital reserve?
Yep.
Okay.
And Mike, you're saying with no tax increase, that'll take us down to,
Like $23 million from the committed fund balance. Committed fund balance, you have to move it into the unassigned fund balance.
Right.
So that, and I'm just trying to give you a ballpark figure.
Okay.
Right, just so, to clarify again, so right now, with the 6 million from last year, the 7.5, if we have no increase, would take our reserve down to 23 million.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so if we did a 2%, then that would be taking 5.3 million out
Correct.
of,
Out of our savings.
so we would be at like 29 and some.
Which would increase taxes about how much?
you'd be at 25.
25, then Meg.
Oh,
You're only making them 2.
2% in,
oh.
a 2% increase in taxes on the average homeowner would be about an $85 increase, an annual $85 increase, which is about $7, $8 a month.
And it would take your fund balance down to about 25.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to take from the, I mean, is there a dangerously low number with that number, that fund balance, if we do no increase, 7.5 from that, that takes us to the 23 million. Would that be like a dangerously low number?
That's your call. I mean, I
Well, I
just-
mean, in the whole scheme of things.
What-
Yeah.
I would do some kind of tax increase just because you don't want to, once you leave a year go, it's gone. You can never recapture that back. So I'm not all about, I'm not saying, you know, tax increase, but I mean, I'm just trying to, if you're looking at any kind of projects and so forth, that's where you want to make sure you have a healthy fund balance. You have two different components. You have an unassigned fund balance and you have the committed fund balance.
Right,
And
right.
you want to make sure.
I mean, for the past, 5 or 6 years, we did a 0% about, 3 years ago, I think for 21, 22, or no, it was 2021.
Last year, we did a 2% increase.
And then usually I think from when I've been back on the board, I think we've been like 1.8 to about 2.25-ish. I don't think we've gone to 2.5 since in the past 5 or 6 years or so, if anybody recalls the
I think there was
exact
one year we
numbers.
did 2.25.
2.25. I don't think we went up
But-
to 2.5 at all.
No, I don't think so.
So 2.25 might have been the highest. So it's been that real tight 1.8, 1.9. I think we had 1 or 2 years where it's just under 2, and then one it was about 2.25. So we've been very tight in that number. I don't
we
know if
work
the board's
with 2?
comfortable with that as a whole, or if you want to go with the, everybody's getting socked left and right on everything else. If we saw oil production, gas is going to go up again, right in time for summer driving season. We're going to see gasoline at probably over $4 a gallon in 2 months. Everybody's getting hit pretty hard. I don't know if we can throw something out there to kind of appease it. I mean, or if the board's okay with floating around what we've usually been doing. That's why I wanted to leave it out there for, to get a consensus to give Mr. Sokolowski some guidance, because we are at time now. We are in April. So this does have to be approved by June. So,
Yeah, and I know this is an uncomfortable conversation and nobody wants to be the bad guy. At the end of the day, it's almost 9 o'clock. And so if we could just decide on something, and I say, I think we should decide on an increase, I will be the bad guy. I'll start that. And then if we kept it where it's been before, which is, I think, the 2.25, right?
It's 2.
Just
It
2?
was 2 last year.
Okay.
around 2, we've been,
It was
for the past
2%.
several years.
So,
we've been around
it's
2.
not like this hasn't been happening.
Yeah.
It's been happening. And so.
And we can adjust it. We're just trying to give you a
It's
number.
just-
Yeah, this can
Or
move
just
all the
to
way
say
through.
what to do. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
say.
I think, look
do
for a
it.
number that he can start
Right.
working with his, his numbers, and I know he's going to work, try to do the best he can to make it favorable. So
Okay. 2.
Yeah, I would start at 2.
Okay.
Last question I have is, so the $85 increase at the 2%, what is, when we say a normal household, what is that assessed at?
The average assessment is $67,111.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay?
Okay, so
Thank you
Yep.
for
Thank you.
sounds
direction.
like, yep, okay,
Appreciate
thank you,
that.
everybody, thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Next slide, please. Our annual subscriptions due for our frontline is Forecast 5 software. We use this for our annual financial report for the state. It helps us with analyzing our different accounts and so forth. Next year, the cost is increasing about $1,400, so we'll be asking for approval for that one-year subscription. Any questions on that? Next slide, please. Just the information, and we'll be accepting the donation from Giant Corporation. It was roughly $9,400. Funds will be put in our food service operation. It has to be used for our food service department. You'll see another item here for some equipment. We just want to thank the community and Giant Foods for continued support of our students and fighting our food insecurities in our community. Every year we request to approve our student lunch prices. Next year, our lunch prices, we are CEP district, everyone gets a free lunch and breakfast. Any additional lunch they would have to purchase, obviously, those prices would remain the same. The only increase we're going to see next year is our adult breakfast and our adult lunch price, $2.40 and $4.75. This is required. We have to stay above the minimum requirements for federal reimbursement rates. So that's the reason we have to raise our prices for those two areas. Currently, we received 3 bids for our food service management company, which currently we're with Whitson's. We are reviewing those bids. If anybody's interested and like to sit down and look at the bids and see them, they're more than welcome to come in my office. And we have a scoring rubrics cube to basically look and see what the best recommendation would be for the district.
Is it a Rubik's Cube?
Yeah, that's like
That word.
rubric, sorry. Yeah, that's what I feel like, trust me.
I know, it's late, Mike, I
Yeah,
get it.
sorry. So scoring methods and so forth on that, so if you're interested, please reach out to me next week. There's several administrators reviewing them at this time, and the more the merrier, I guess you would say, so we can come up with a fair answer for those bids.
Mike, when you and I had a conversation, I was concerned about comparing apples to apples, no pun intended, with the food services. If a board member comes to look at the bids that you have, is it clear enough for a common layperson like myself to take a look at that and say, okay, this company's coming in a lot lower, but they're not providing the same level of service as this company?
I try to give a summary sheet on the numbers, the staffing and so forth for the person that doesn't see that information on a daily basis. There's other areas, for instance, the quality assurance of the product, and there's a lot of detailed information in there that you just have to review that. So I try to give a summary to help those people that don't look at this information on a daily basis.
That's part of the Rubik's Cube.
You got it, especially at this hour. Next item, please. Whitson's are requesting a new pass-through refrigerator for the Forks Elementary School. This would be supporting our breakfast program that has taken off. So the cost will be approximately $5,725. This will be paid for with funds from the cafeteria account, which we'll be asking for approval at our next meeting. We have a request for an approval of a new scholarship in memory of Mary McNevic-Durrier, a guidance counselor in the district that passed away in April 2022. This will be available to our high school kids. Anybody who's entering a 2 4-year college, trade, technical, or business school in the future. We'll be asking approval of that. Next item, please. The high school has requested 2 new student activities at the high school, namely named the African Student Association and the Red Poppies for Veterans. Both activities will be student-run with an advisor, and we'll be requesting approval for that also. Our annual senior citizen tax rebate program, we renew on a yearly basis to offset real estate taxes for those who qualify by income levels. This will run from July 7th through April 19th, 2024. This is an annual approval that we do at the board level for our senior citizens to take advantage of the program. We involved with Colonial IU for joint purchasing our paper bids this year for a 23-24 year. Approximate increase in price for just these items, it's a lot of copy paper, toilet paper, paper towels, was approximately $6,000. We'll be requesting approval for this at our next meeting. St. Luke's Athletic Scholarships, which are part of our St. Luke's Cottingham agreement, they are gracious enough to give us in the agreement we have an amount of funding that Dr. Valtz will be giving out scholarships here in the very near future for athletes. The money comes right through St. Luke's, and then it goes right out to our students, and they'll be selected through the athletic department. Is any other questions? Sorry, I didn't mean to rush through that. Any other questions for me? Thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Somebody have a question? No? Okay, so there are several items that will require board action coming up, and Mr. Sokolowski is going to be continuing working on the budget. So thank you for providing him with some guidance so that he knows what kind of numbers to plug in. That being said, if there's anyone from the public, I don't see anyone hiding out there or anyone who popped in to discuss that. So that'll be the end of the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we will have policy, which is actually me. And so I'll turn that over to Dr. Burrs.
Thank you and good evening. You'll notice there are 10 policies on tonight's agenda. Just some highlights. Policy 435 FMLA was reviewed by both the solicitor and the committee. There are no changes on that, so when it is posted on the agenda on the 18th, it'll just say for approval, no changes, just as an update to the dates so that we know that it was actually reviewed. Policy 829, electronic data storage, that is actually a new policy to the Easton Area School District. It is part of new legislation that has come out and must be in effect by June. And then because that contains some new items, we updated policy 830, breach of computerized personal information, and those updates are only to match topics and categories that were listed in policy 829. When you click on the attachments, you will see the changes. There are either strike-throughs and or new language in red font. You'll also see policy 707 has some highlights because we're highlighting some areas for you to notice that were changed or shuffled from one location in the old policy to a new location in order to make the policy more user-friendly and easier to read versus trying to find different things throughout. Again, you'll notice all the changes that are there. These will be on the April 18th board agenda for first reading if you have no questions. But again, they have been reviewed by the solicitor as well as the policy committee.
Yeah, I do have a few, if I may, and maybe it's late, but oh well. When I look at 707, I'm looking at facilities here. I see at the bottom of page 2, groups requesting any facilities must submit an application at least 21 calendar days prior to the event to the school principal. Is this being done? For example, say maybe for concession stands at the football stadium? Or is this not being done for that? I don't know.
I can't answer what is currently done. These are some of the recommendations that are being suggested to go into effect on July the 1st. Because of the new ML schedules that we're using to secure facilities, that brought about some of the changes in this policy.
Okay, yeah, and that is on the school website, the information on that under facility use. Okay, I was just curious about that. And then the other thing I had with that was, maybe you don't know, but do the intramural groups have to request this? Does the football team have to say, hey, we're using Cottingham, this is our schedule, or is it just something that happens? There's no, it's like, okay, it's Friday night, here are our home games, we show up whatever time we need to show
For
up.
our regularly scheduled athletic programs, they don't have to do ML schedules. But
Right.
if they do anything outside of their season or something different, then yeah.
Okay, so the football team, the three main entities, the football team, the band, and the cheerleaders on, say, football games, just, they know it's in their schedule, they know where they got to be, hour, 2 hours, whatever the time frame is before that. Okay, and then, okay, I was just wondering about the, the application process, which is referenced there, the ML schedules form item. I have a note here, item 1A on page 7. That's on the policy there. Let me get to page 7. It says here, application process for approval, and it has the Class 1 and Class 2 listed there. It specifically says, and that's a reference, sort of a circular reference to my first question about the 21 days. Is this being done? Are people, is there a way we can find out who's requesting what or get some sort of report of who's doing this? Because I know we've had an issue that came up again today in an email about use of certain facilities that the attorney has told us are ours and we can do what we want. So maybe this is some way to maybe get some clarity on that usage for facilities that we seem to have an issue with. So if we don't have answers now, at least I want to put it out there and see if we can follow up on that. So I don't think I have anything else. I'm just going with some other notes, which I won't know. I won't ask those until we get some of the other questions.
Brian, I can answer that just really quickly, and we can come back and get you some more information. But, I mean, I can tell you that it's not been consistent across the district for some time. So that's why we've addressed this policy itself, was to make sure that we provide consistency and asked everybody to do the same thing across the board. So this is really a policy that is meant more for outside groups to utilize our buildings and our facilities, such as a room in the building for, in the high school, or a Cheston, or Cottingham Stadium for the city. It's for outside groups and internal to utilize our facilities. So that is part of this overall policy. If there's specifics, we can certainly get the board information. But I at least want to answer your question that you asked. There has been some inconsistency across the board, so that's something we're trying to address.
Yeah, because there was one thing I had seen, I don't have access to the MLS thing, but I did see it, is that when you go in, there's like a drop-down box you get, and even there's one for Cottingham. That's one of our facilities. How about that? There's one for Cottingham, and it even mentions in Cottingham, it even mentions stands in there. It itemizes stands, but it doesn't itemize concession stands. It just says stands, and I asked for clarity on that, and they said stands meaning the seating. The seating. So so if somebody requests use for that, the mechanism is in there to say we'd like to request Cottingham, and we're going to have spectators. Is kind of the assumption with use of stands, but it didn't come up with, why wasn't there anything else for the other part of the facilities? And some of the things that came up were concession stands and possibility of other groups setting up tables or other stands if they wanted to have a information session, if they want to put out literature, sell things, things like that. Since it's our stadium, if we should be allowed to dictate who uses that. So there was some discussion that came up at one of our policy committee meetings about trying to refine that a little bit, about what we can and cannot do, or what we can allow others to do. And again, it comes back to that one, sort of to that policy that we should have approved, but we didn't. But that's another topic. But it comes back to that as far as some other issues we're seeing now with facilities usage and some discrepancies that we have. And, if we're going to refine this, we got to talk about it. I don't care what time it is. We got to talk about it. And if something fits in this policy and it fits in another policy, then we got to do that. Then we got to bring that out. We got to talk about it. Doesn't matter what time it is. We got to get it resolved. I know Mr. Pipperato and the administration had a policy proposed that the board didn't approve. As I said, I'm open to reviewing that again, but that's not related to what's on the agenda right now. So I'll just let it go. I said what I wanted to say for now, just to put it out there.
Brian, I would just add, I don't think what you're trying to fix here, which is a problem, and I think most of us agree it needs to be fixed. I don't think that's the intention of this particular policy. When your frustration is shared with me, I share your frustration, I should say, about what's happening with the concession stands. I don't think that's this particular policy. I think we need to resolve that issue, possibly separate from this. We did ask the solicitor at one time, and the conversation went in a different direction since that time. Is there merit to creating a users agreement with particular groups who are using our concession stands, short of adopting a policy that we've continued to strongly recommend to the board? You may want to at least look at that, but I guess I would caution that we don't want to stretch this policy beyond what it's really intended to use. If you're trying to address another issue, I think there's probably another way to do that. And again, it's up to the board to do that, but I just wanted to, I hear you loud and clear. I know what you're trying to accomplish here. I'm not sure this is the policy under which to do it.
Okay. That's why I asked. I just didn't know if there was
Yeah.
a way they were linked or there's another avenue we need to pursue. But I wanted to at least put it out there that it is something that I think we need to address. And be it this, maybe this policy, maybe you're right, maybe this is a little more narrower in scope and we have to work on another resolution. But I figured I'd just throw it out there and get everybody thinking about it. So I appreciate that, though. Thank you. I agree with that.
The only thing I was going to say was this policy is meant to be consistent across all of our facilities, right? So our buildings, our fields, et cetera. So it's to address the whole with all of our community groups, all of our school groups, all of our approved groups, et cetera. So I agree with that assessment and the fact that this is meant to address a much bigger and consistent issue. So I agree with that's a separate piece.
Brian, what was that, that number? Was it 905?
9:15.
915, 915. How do we go about bringing that back up and looked at?
You just asked for the policy committee to come bring it back, right? And then we'll go over and then present it to you for you guys to decide. Since we're talking about it now, which is quite fine, me personally, this is my personal opinion about policy 950. It just felt extremely broad, and I felt like it was trying to solve a specific issue that had ramifications for other people who had no part of that issue. So I am definitely open to bringing it back, but even with this policy 707, I like that it's talking about a specific thing. So I think as we bring policy 915 back, we also need to consider what's out there about specific things, if that's possible. Because for me, why it was hard to vote for that one, it was just too broad. And I felt like it was covering, I understand what you're trying to do with it, but I felt like it seemed punitive for other groups. But being on the policy committee, I'm quite fine for us bringing it back up and reviewing it over again.
Yeah, I would like to see it be brought forward again.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
and then, okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. And
Okay.
if you're okay, I mean, policy chair, if you're, okay.
I have nothing further unless there are questions.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you. Yeah, we looked at 915 for quite a while, had a lot of community comment, met with a lot of the groups. The board opposed it. It was like overkill, a solution looking for a problem. I just don't see the need to go through this again, to put extra constraints and hamstrings on our family of volunteers in the Easton School District. Thank you.
All right, that's it for the policies committee. Do we have any other business that the board would like to discuss at this time?
No?
Okay. Is there anybody from the public to be heard on non-agenda items? Okay, seeing none. This meeting is adjourned.